yourself. And we're live.
Okay. If you don't want a man unhappy politically, don't give him two sides to question to worry him. Give him one. Better yet, give him none. Let him forget there is such a thing as war. If the government is inefficient, top-heavy, and tax-mad, better it be all those than the people worry about it. Peace, Montag. Give the people the contest they win by remembering the words to more popular songs or the names of state capitals or how much corn Iowa grew last year. Cram them full of non-combustible data. Pack them so damn full of facts they feel stuffed, but absolutely brilliant with information. And then they'll feel their thinking. And then they'll get a sense of motion without moving, that they'll be happy. Because facts of that sort don't change. So welcome to book club. Sorry. And welcome to book club. This week's book was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And so I'm just going to also read the synopsis of the book in case people here haven't read it. So Guy Montag is a fireman. His job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, the printed book, along with the houses in which they are hidden. Montag never questions the destruction and ruins his actions produce, returning each day to his bland life and his wife Mildred, who spends all day with her television family. But when he meets an eccentric young neighbor, Clarice, who introduces him to a past where they didn't live in fear and to a present where no one sees the world through the ideas of books instead of the mindless chatter of television, Montag begins to question everything he has ever known. Okay, so that was the synopsis. So what did you guys think of the book, those who read it?
It's okay. The part that I found most interesting was how when the chief was giving his monologue, the whole situation that arose, the rewriting of history and everything like that, he says it was society driven. It wasn't governmental policy, but rather the people wanted that. They don't like, and if you look at our culture today, how everybody consumes pop culture and they don't care about like actual news of what's going on in the world. They don't like most people don't want to talk about politics. It's like forced on them.
Yeah.
So they don't care about political positions. Like we're in the infancy of the society that's in that book.
Well, I was reading, so I went into Spark's notes just to read a little bit more of like the themes and ideas in the book. Right. And one of the things they say is mass censorship began with various special interest groups and minorities clamoring against material they considered offensive, as well as a shrinking attention span in the general populace. As a result,
the study of eugenics.
Yeah. No.
Yes. It was banned because it's considered racist to point out differences between ethnic groups.
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
The funniest part, though, in an interview that the author did, everybody thought this book was written about the McCarthy era. Right. It really wasn't. It was written about like the rise of Nazism and communism in Russia and Germany.
Yeah.
That's what his inspiration was. McCarthyism was kind of the reaction to those things. So the book and McCarthyism are both a reaction to the same thing. The society, wanting to censor other things and basically like at the time McCarthyism was because of the vilification of Christianity and how everyone should be atheist and communism is great. And then some overzealous Republicans decided that they were going to start trying to kick the commies out so they didn't have a voice in the media and Hollywood. Bit of an overreaction, but everybody thinks that's what the book was based on, like that's what his inspiration was, but it really wasn't. It was
the socialism overreaction, but look where it led us today.
Well, that's what I said. I'm pro
me
McCarthyism.
And you have to do on the internet now.
I am pro McCarthyism. I just find it funny because everybody vilifies the McCarthy era as being so bad. It's like, but it was fighting the very things that we see now. And if you look at the book, it's fighting the things that society would turn into in the made-up world in Fahrenheit. But like, I don't know. It's kind of, it didn't really talk about it too much, but they killed Clarice because she was strange, because she was different. They were like, it's like we need to all be the same. Everybody needs to be the same thing. And if you look at like the left-leaning colleges in the United States today, being a conservative makes it a very hostile environment. Like if you're different, you're bad. It's like we're already starting to see the beginning of that kind of future dystopia.
So just another passage is I think a quote from the book, we must all be alike, not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. A book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it, take the shot from the weapon, breach the man's mind.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, that everyone must be alike, not born equal, but made equal. I mean, that quote really... It hits that. What is that? How do you say it? Hits it right on the head of the hammer or something?
Head of the nail.
Hits the nail right
on the head.
Yes.
Now I just got distracted. It's the equality of outcome, not equality in the eyes of the law, but equality of outcome. Like that's the very thing that you hear the social justice warriors demanding, and the book even says it was societally pushed.
Yes.
Like it's these books are predicting the future. It seems like those books about future dystopias. They're predictive apparently, which is not a good thing.
And especially this one. This one was oddly prophetic, not only because of the things that we see today and our modern culture, but it also predicted technology rather accurately, like about robots, about these strange, free wall sort of.
Your TV talks to you.
Yeah, and it feeds you lines so you feel like you're a part of it. Like we're moving towards virtual reality right now, where we're going to start becoming and acting in the story.
Exactly.
Well, video games have been doing that for years.
Well, no, that's what we're saying. Is this book was written in the 50s. I think it was published in the early 60s. But he wrote it during the McCarthy era, but it wasn't about the McCarthy era.
I think he might have written it even before. At least that's what I remembered from the interview, because I listened to his interview and he said something about having written it before in the McCarthy era, just because when the interviewer asked him the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it took him a while. I think he finished a couple other books before he finally
it was published in 53. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Not written, published. Okay, So it was written before that. It wasn't published until the McCarthy era.
In the copy of the book I have, it actually says that people kept asking him whether it was George Orwell or Brave New World, like which one influenced it. And he says it was Darkness at Noon. So that was the book that kind of, by Kostler. So I don't know, maybe we should add that to the list. But that was the book that really inspired this story for him, more so than Orwell. But obviously they all have similar themes, I think. Especially the role of technology, I've noticed in all of these books and all of these dystopian futures, and how that's a source to numb you and make you not think and make you not feel.
Look at the mainstream media. Like in the book when Montag is running from the fucking robot dog, right? Yeah. They talk about how the media, like the guy that he runs into is like, yeah, they're going to catch you. You're going to die tonight. But it's not going to be you. They're just going to find someone and say it's you for
So why
for the thrill of the audience. Like that's what our media does. Like when they come out with the white cop shoots poor black man, then it turns out the black guy was carrying a gun and threatening people. It doesn't matter anymore. It's just all about that entertainment aspect. They don't care about the truth.
Threat. Like why would they not continue to go after him and just find anyone as a scapegoat?
No, they will. Like, they're still going to be looking for him, but the public narrative is that, oh, we got him, he's dead now, because they just picked somebody at random to appease the audience because of the short attention spans.
I mean, the indifference to death is really a theme in this book. Like, Mildred's indifference to her neighbors dying, and then even him stating a few times that he wouldn't feel anything if his wife died, just...
Well, yeah, it's based on Nazi Germany. Like, they had a huge indifference to death that was going on around them. So people are like, oh, we didn't know what was going on over there. It's like, well, you knew tens of thousands of people were interned over there being starved in forced labor camps. There's fucking human ash floating through the air on a daily basis, but they didn't care. They weren't even interested in going and seeing what was going on. You have to assume a lot of them knew and just didn't care.
When he reads that poem and that lady, the Mrs. Bolt, starts reacting and starts crying, what did you guys think that was about?
Her husband died.
Oh, right, okay.
That's what it was about.
So, and this war. So there's this war.
Right, but and that's the same. This is the same thing. We were talking to Mycroft in Dumpster Fire, and it reminded me of that. I was talking about how people, we'd have to have some kind of death reaction, like 9/11. That's something that happened here to get the Americas' empathy towards it. And it's the same thing. Like she has that. Her husband died in war thing. It was like with the majority of people, as you said, they're indifferent to death, unless it's somebody they know or something that happens right in front of them. Like they actually see it.
Yeah, but they have that line in the book that it won't happen to you. Like it'll always happen
that's
to
what I was gonna say. And in our society, they kind of have that thing going on. Like they're like, oh, look at the horrors of this war. Of Iraq and Afghanistan, of what's going on in Syria and the Ukraine. It's like this has been going on for the entire existence of mankind, right? Like, and we've studied it, and we see the death tolls, and we hear about the injuries and how medicine advanced through war because the horrors of war, like World War I. But then, for some reason, every generation, like, oh my God, war is so horrible. Like, they didn't know. It's like you actually study it in school. Like, the public school education for middle school and high school covers these things. They talk about death tolls and all the injured and things like that.
Hardly.
People just don't care. They're indifferent to it.
We learn.
Stalin said, one person's death is a tragedy. 1,000 people dying is a statistic.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to impose.
Why are you sharing that crap, Loki?
What?
Why are you sharing that?
Don't distract. Don't distract from the book. Go. Don't mind me.
That's what you're doing. That's literally what you're doing.
I just wanted to impose a bit of a structure. Maybe for the listeners, it would be better if we started more at the beginning. At the beginning, Montag is. I would like to use, our parallel that he's completely blue-pilled. He has he has pleasure in this burning of books and everything. And later on, it changes. So what do you think made Montag at first so indifferent and not caring, and even
that's the societal
making him revel in? But why did he love? He loved burning books. Why?
That was his job.
Cleansing of fire, the role of fire itself as a symbol in the book, and something that cleanses. It takes it's. I don't know.
It renews, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Like society is being made better by it. But it's the indoctrination. That's what he's taught. Like they're saying that Benjamin Franklin was the first fireman who was burning books. Right? They rewrite the history, which we're also seeing today, and convince people that this is great, like intersectional feminism and how great it is. And
exactly.
You have college kids saying how great segregation is. I watched a video on YouTube of someone actually listing out how we should segregate housing and schools and all the way down to water fountains, unironically.
And that's what I mean. It's some sort of reveling in destruction.
And also instant gratification. Like when you're watching something burn, it's gratifying. And there's this whole theme of instant gratification in the book, which I think is so relevant right now. We're so intolerant of waiting for anything. We don't have patience. As soon as something... And doesn't Beatty later say that in the book of whenever you have a problem, just destroy it, just burn it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's our society. Think of how many people don't pay attention to their lives and the decisions that they make. They sit around watching TV and just complaining about things. And they're doing nothing to change their lives. They're ignoring their problems. It's already a thing. The book is just an extreme example of that, where the society as a whole is ignoring all problems.
And I'd say, that in a certain way, before he meets Clarice and metaphorically takes the red pill, he is an SJW. He is an activist. And what something about these ideologies, about feminism, communism, whatever, they are excuses. They are excuses to for terrible behavior, and that's what I think this the loving of the learning books is about.
Yeah.
Well, it's the mob mentality when it comes to like feminism as a label, right? They're in a group and like they talk about the echo chambers, and in the book, obviously, it's the society as
Like
a
a
whole is
literal
one
echo
big
chamber, right?
echo chamber of repeating things to each other. But then you have that group mentality. Now you're just a faceless body in the group. So your personal responsibility of what you're doing is kind of removed from these things. Like the indifference to death. You don't know them, so you don't care. And everybody else is watching it, so why shouldn't you? Just like the feminists telling everybody that they're sexist, misogynist pigs, and we need to create these laws that are literally sexist against men. It's a part of the group. Everybody's thinking it, and they're like, oh, so it makes it more acceptable because we want to be in the in group.
Somehow they took the minute of hate and just extended it to like a lifetime.
That's a 1984 reference. We're not on that book right now. If you didn't join the book, stop trying to make books that you have read relevant. You should have read the book. So then he meets Clarice, right? And so she's
It's like the first thing in the book.
Yeah, so we're kind of going through. I'm following Lady Bastard's lead, and we're following through the progression of events. And I'm so curious about her. Like, how does she even exist though in this world? Like, they say something about her family being nonconformist or something, or her
The
uncle.
whole family is under observation because they're not quite normal. But she was too abnormal, and so they had to take her out. But they took out the whole family, I believe. Pretty sure that's what the chief said.
Yeah, I think so.
Was that the whole family had to go? Like when he asked her why she isn't in school, the whole thing is that the school said she was weird, she didn't fit in, she was antisocial because she asked questions. So asking questions that the teacher doesn't have an answer to just makes you antisocial.
And
so
she
didn't go to
says
school.
like wanting to sit around and talk to people about the strangeness of the world is somehow antisocial. Like you just are supposed to say talking quotes and talking points.
Exactly. Well, that's what I said. Like, have you ever tried to have an in-depth conversation with one of these feminists?
Yes, exactly.
They don't know any of the nuance of anything that they're talking about. They're just repeating lines that they heard. They're just parroting sound bites. And that's in the book. That's all society is. So when you try to go into nuance and detail or have a difference of opinion, it's a bad thing.
Did you guys ever look up the Google's definition of what a bigot is?
Google's definition or Wikipedia?
Yeah, Google's.
Google's
definition of a bigot is somebody who is intolerant of other people's opinions. Yeah. I just find it ironic that when you talk to SJWs, they start yelling at you that you're a goddamn bigot for your opinion because they hate your opinion and don't care about it while you're trying to listen to them and have a discussion with them.
Yeah. That's why we the first video that we did on our channel was, I did, was cognitive dissonance, because it was just no understanding of what you're saying and how you're behaving are not the same.
Yeah, and it's hard to talk with these people because all they can say is buzzword, buzzword, buzzword.
Yeah.
Buzzwords from BuzzFeed.
Well, no, that's my whole point. Is Clarice was seen as antisocial because she asked questions that people didn't have the answers to because they never bothered to look at those things. They're like, oh, I heard this, so that's good enough for me at face value. And they just consume the pop culture, watching the TV. Like Montauk says, like his wife is just watching. I can't remember what it was called. But basically, she's just sitting there watching the TV all day.
Her family. They refer to her as her virtual family, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean there was a name for the television. I basically envisioned it as a big screen TV built into a wall.
Well, she says it's on 3 walls too, and she's asking for a 4th wall.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's just
completely.
a big huge TV. But basically, like she was more concerned with that than talking to him. Like when Clarice was killed, and he asked, like, "Oh, I haven't seen her," and she's like, "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you a couple days ago. She's dead."
Yeah.
But she was trying to watch TV, and like she got some joy from telling him that she was dead because she was kind of jealous, but at the same time,
Yes.
she didn't want to really give Montag attention. She wanted to go back to the TV.
Yeah, she seems irritated with him, like just that
Yeah.
she just wants to go and pay attention to that life, and like she's relieved when he leaves. She doesn't care.
Yeah.
And there's a certain symbolism to that fourth wall. I don't know if Bradbury himself knew what he was writing, but there is a term in theater. It's called breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And here you see the complete reversal of that thing. It's, it's setting up the fourth wall. It's completely, framing yourself into this thing. Don't know words.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then on top of that, you're also integrated in the story. Like they give you lines, so you're just living in this false reality this entire time. So, okay, so after so then there's Mildred's. He gets home after talking to Clarice, and there's Mildred's attempted suicide.
Yes.
Again, and then these people come in and they switch her blood, and then they do something, and then she completely forgets that she's attempted to commit suicide and thinks she must have just forgotten how many pills she took or something.
Go on.
I mean,
Swear to God, you guys are talking about equilibrium. So I mean, why is she? Was she attempting to commit suicide? Actually, could she have just not been aware of how much she's taking? I don't. Is she the stereotypical character? Are they all internally miserable in this world? What was the significance of that whole thing?
Well, it was damn significant. It's just hard a bit to pinpoint it.
Trigger, what do you think?
I have no opinion about it.
Okay.
I mean, I
didn't see it to be important.
You didn't? Okay.
I think it was important, especially when the technicians or whatever those people who fixed her left. He had quite an interesting monologue. I didn't, if I can find it.
Yeah, just how nonchalant they were about this whole thing. Like this is something that just happens all the time in their society.
About how many people there are and how you don't come in and basically violate your body and leave and
Yeah.
on the page, but I can't.
No, I remember that. Yeah, the like how they just it's something about blood. Like there's the theme of blood also, I think, came
Yeah,
through a lot.
I found the passage. It says, "There are too many of us," he thought. "There are billions of us, and that's too many. Nobody knows anyone. Strangers come and violate you. Strangers come and cut your heart out. Strangers come and take your blood. Good God, who were those men? I never saw them before in my life." And this passage really stuck with me for some reason.
See, I thought the whole thing was she didn't attempt suicide, that she really did take too much pills.
Oh.
The brain rot of watching TV all day, that the short attention span, and forgot she took her meds. But
Okay.
the whole thing you were saying, like they changed her blood and made her forget, I don't remember that at all. So apparently I've misinterpreted that whole thing.
Yeah, well, when he calls the hospital, they send paramedics, and then the paramedics essentially give her a blood transfusion, and then they give her these.
So she doesn't die.
Yeah. And he finds that whole thing very invasive. And then I guess they give her some sort of medication that makes her forget that the whole thing even happened.
Yes, yeah, I don't remember that part. I don't know where that came from.
Well, okay. So
what about her character, though? What about Mildred's character?
I found her really irritating. I mean, I get what she was trying to represent. But maybe we saw the book differently because I thought that her suicide was significant, and apparently so you find out that like so after this incident, Montague gets called and they go to this house and they're gonna burn the house, and the woman there refuses to leave.
Yeah, and then she lights
And
herself on fire.
yes, and she lights, and so this is kind of like the another huge event for him that makes him.
Well, yeah. See that I think that was Clarice's death, and it was kind of like it was upsetting. But I think the lady burning herself that gave him that curiosity about the books. Like now he couldn't let it go. Because what was
Why
so
would anyone
good
do
about
this?
those books that somebody would actually burn themselves with the books rather than give them up.
And so this time, and so at this incident, he takes a book with him,
Right.
and he takes it home. And then but I think at some point we realized that he's been taking books for some time now, and he has almost 20 of them hidden in his house. And bringing it back to Mildred, she knew about them, I think.
She didn't know about the other books. That's why she reported him.
And
She found
I
the
mean,
one book when the chief was there, and then which
Yes.
the chief knew that he took a book because he's like, yeah, it happens to every fireman. You know, at some
Yeah.
point in time, they have that crisis of conscience. And so like that's what his whole coming and talk and saying that whenever you have a problem, you just burn everything. That's what his whole speech was about. Like, yeah, the book's there, and he's like, and it does happen. He's like, but we give you time to turn the book in, and then if you don't, then we'll come force you to turn it in.
Yeah.
But now I wasn't sure if that was saying if you don't turn the book in, we're gonna come burn your house down and all the books,
yeah, I
or
thought that
if he was saying like we'll just come by force and then we'll take the book, and then if there's no other issues, everything will be fine. So I wasn't
That's
sure
how
if that
I
was
read it.
I wasn't sure if it was a thinly veiled threat or not.
That's how I read it.
Yeah,
Because
well,
the
that's what I
thing
said. Like that is how I read it, but I was like, it could have been a threat though.
I thought it was a threat. Yeah,
As I say,
and
I wasn't completely dismissing it as a threat. It was a
Yeah.
possibility. But I did read it as though he was saying we'll come and take the book, kind of like a drug intervention, if you will.
Yeah. And you can tell. So go ahead.
I just wanted to say that Mildred couldn't have known about the other books because she was self-absorbed all the time.
She
maybe.
wasn't paying attention. She was just watching TV or talking to her family, as they say. What I'm saying is like the whole what was the guy's name? The professor?
Faber.
Yeah. Like then he goes and seeks him out because he doesn't know what to do because the book that he has is the Bible.
Is the Bible, yeah.
Right, and he knows that's a very rare book. So now he's got even more of he just at random grabbed a book and it happened to be the Bible. Now he has an even more of a dilemma and a more crisis of his conscience going on because he knows that book was like one of the first books to be destroyed.
And I think he contemplates that this might be the very last copy of it in existence too.
Right. Well, as I'm saying, is that was the first book to be destroyed, and look at society now. Christian values are horrible. Right, Christians
Yeah.
are bad. They're bigots. They're racist. They're sexist. Everything about Christianity is bad. So if we do start burning books, I'll tell you right now, the Bible's the first one to go.
Yeah,
actually, I think
probably.
in the Nazi Empire, wasn't that one of the first books that they burned too?
but what about God with uns thing?
What?
The God with us thing that the Nazis had. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, weren't the nuts? I don't know if they were.
Anyways.
But yeah, but the Bible was still burned. Like they even put Catholics in concentration camps towards the end. They turned on the Catholic Church because they used to have the Pope's support in the beginning, but then they turned on the church as well. See, Amanda says no, it'll be the Quran. I disagree. Well, at least in Western society, the Christians are more vilified, and there's Islam apologists everywhere for even the most horrific things that you hear about done in the name of Islam. People are like, no, it's fine. Those are the same ones who are vilifying Christianity as being the great evil.
Okay,
Right? The great Satan. They agree with Islam on that one.
Sorry, but before he goes to see Faber, we have Beatty's like speech and explanation as to
Yeah.
why all of this is happening, right? And how so firemen used to extinguish fires at some point, and
Right, yeah, he admits it because the whole narrative that they're taught is that Benjamin Franklin was the first fireman to burn books. Like, he was the American country, the United States was founded on book burning, and like that's how society had been the entire time. But the chief is like, no. In actuality, it wasn't that way, but society was shit. Thank God we burn books now. We made it so
yeah.
much better.
And then, and this is the part where he starts explaining how the mass censorship began with not wanting to offend self-interest groups and minorities,
Yes.
and people just wanting to be all together, wanting to go into the sensory stated, media of just instant gratification. But yeah, so this is where we see the censorship started with the people, and then the government kind of stepped in later, and
And
then a lot of people stopped reading the books before they were ever even burned.
I really
Right.
like the metaphor and the parallels we can see with the thing about the firemen. You know how they were firemen used to be a noble profession, and then it got perverted. So I see it as a sort of parallel with justice and social justice, because social justice is a total perversion of justice.
Right.
So
Right.
that is a parallel I can see.
Well, and that was kind of the whole underlining premise of the entire book. It's an entire perversion of society where people didn't want to face problems. You didn't want to offend the minority groups or anything like that, and so society was trying to be as equitable to each other as possible. Um, everybody should be the same. That's the best way for it to be.
Yeah.
And so different religions obviously are a problem. But I'd say you see the vilification of Christians today in like our actual society, and you'd have to imagine it's the same thing because Christians have values that in some instances are not like, well, slavery for instance is in the Bible, right? And so that hurts the black folks in the United States. The Christian, they say it was a Christian nation, and then the genocide of the Native Americans, which is Reformation history.
Yeah.
But that's all blamed on the Christians. So all the bad things that people don't want to hear about, that make people uncomfortable, that marginalize the minorities, are all blamed on
Yeah.
Christians.
And this idea also here where if something makes you uncomfortable, just push it away. If something, irritates you, makes you offended, makes you upset, let's just be distracted all the time, and let's just be happy in that moment and not think about the things that make us, isn't there a quote, is shouldn't we be bothered by some things? There's a one quote, I don't know where it is, but like we should be bothered by something from time to time. Why don't we? He says something like that.
About when he has the talk with the party. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I feel
So
like
so
I feel like we should bring Amanda into the live stream. That way we can start balancing it out a little bit more.
sure, does she want to come in?
Balancing it out how?
Balancing it out how?
Yeah.
To the degree where there's at least one person here who hasn't read the book and has no idea what's happening, and maybe another person who did and who loves the book might help.
Okay. I don't know how that. 3 people here have read the book. I'm not really sure what the imbalance is.
Anyway, so I would like to just continue. It's up to you guys, but
Go.
okay, so Beatty makes his explanation, and then this is when he goes to see Faber, which is this professor that he's met about a year earlier in the park, who he knew had a book, but he didn't say anything, and he just sat with him for a little while, and so Faber gives him his contact information. And so then at this instant he has a fight with Mildred, or they decide, he says give me 24 hours or something, and then he goes to see Faber, and
Right.
and I don't know, like, if I care much for Faber's character.
Why?
It
Well,
seems
see,
like
I think without him, the story wouldn't have progressed. Montag would have turned in the book and then would have went on about his life and
okay.
just not had rebelled like he had.
Okay, so do you want
story
Go
is, I
ahead.
think, basically a redemption story for a moral coward who stood by and didn't let any, and let all those things happen in the past when he saw that he could have changed something. And he lives with these regrets. And then he meets Montag, who is, young and full of passion and
Yeah.
daring. And that is sort of, okay, he met his Jesus, basically, because he now can have a redemption arc.
Like in the chief's speech that he gave Montauk, he's like uh, talking about the short attention span and like going back because Amanda wants us to redress the suicide attempt. But in
Okay.
the chief's speech, he says classics cut to fit 15-minute radio shows, then cut again to fill a 2-minute book column, winding up at last as a 10 or 12-line dictionary resume. Right, as I say, basically everything keeps getting cut and cut and shortened and shortened and shortened, and that's for the attention span. That's why I say, like, I think her suicide attempt was more of a, she was just like the brain rot of, like social media is today, and consuming of television and things like that. And she just took her pills, like she's supposed to take her pills, then forgot she took her pills and kept doing it because the short attention span, like going
Okay.
from long books to 15-minute radio shows to 2-minute columns to 10 lines written down as a short explanation. So you go from something like the Count of Monte Cristo to one paragraph.
Yeah, and I mean, even now when we absorb our majority of our information, what is it? People just look at the headlines. They just look at.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying so. The suicide attempt, I don't think was a suicide attempt, and I think it's worse that it wasn't a suicide attempt. That she's
Yeah,
just
okay.
so stupid and distracted and interested in the TV that her medicine wasn't even as important to her as her family. Her
I,
television family.
I think, that basically the subconsciousness matters a lot in Bradbury's novels. And I think that she didn't do it consciously, but her subconsciousness basically wanted to die. She was so miserable inside that she didn't want to admit that to herself. And
And I
she
mean
basically
later,
self-sabotaged her own,
and
suicide.
Well, she says that when Montauk is asleep, she goes and she drives really fast and
yeah,
runs over animals and things like that to make herself feel better.
And Montag has, this sort of insight also when I think he looks into her eyes and he sees her front and he thinks that, okay, in the very deep, she's so broken, she probably can be fixed. I think something like that is in his monologue.
and I mean later, and spoiler alert, when Montauk turns the fire gun on Beatty and kills Beatty, he says the line that Beatty wanted to die. Like he did nothing to try to stop himself or fight back. Like he just stood there and let it happen, kind of thing. So
No,
I
he
think.
baited him. He baited him.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that again, it was maybe there is this unconscious thing. I guess it was a little bit of both with her suicide, but I think they kind of bring that back later.
Well, I mean, yeah. The same thing, like you hear like all the activists or the slacktivists, as they say, and they all have opinions on things that they don't know. Um, Basically, people want to feel important, like they matter, like they're more significant. And in the book, the society is the complete opposite. So your societal norm. So if you do that, you basically get killed by the government, right?
Yeah.
Like Clarice did. So they all have to internalize that. So a depressed and suicidal society would, of course, be something that would happen because the whole personal feelings of being more important than other people is what would get you killed. So yeah,
Yeah.
subconscious suicide is not a far stretch of the imagination in that kind of
And
society.
Amanda's bringing up how she felt so lonely, unfulfilled, and would seek anything to fill a hole, and like just living in an empty marriage. And I mean, how many people probably live that right now?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like everybody wants to feel important, like things that they do matter and things like that. And the society in the book is the polar opposite of that. Being an individual, being different, being more significant or important, is a bad thing, right? You're all just nameless, faceless people who watch TV all day. Kind of like society is right now.
And isn't at the end of the book the guy that he's talking to when he says, like, why wouldn't I care if Mildred dies? And he talks about his grandfather, and it was not missing him, but the things that he had left behind more
Yeah.
so. So, like, the whole point of existence is to try to differ yourself, is to try to be better in any way. Why would you ever do anything if you're not trying to be above average? And by taking that out, your life does become utterly meaningless.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I'm saying. That's they're seeing that as society advances now. Like if you look at groups like Black Lives Matter is a good example, and the pro-blacks and I can't remember the Hoteps or something like that. But when you go and you're a black person who has a difference of opinion than the mainstream opinion, you're ostracized, you're attacked, you're insulted. You know, that's kind of where our society is headed already. Like everybody needs to be the same. No one should stand out. There's no, no person's better than anyone else. And if you have a different, like when it comes like the income inequalities, as they talk about, like all black people are oppressed and a marginalized group. They all are. Everybody needs to accept that narrative. And if you, even if you're a part of the in group and you have a differing opinion, you'll be ostracized for it. And in this book, that's how the entire society is all the way across the board. And so Clarice, who had questions, she just wanted to know about the world around her, was seen as a threat to that society and taken out. So if anybody is not part of that in group in the extremes of that kind of society, you get killed. So they all have to internalize it. So everybody is a unique fucking special little snowflake. And in that society, being a special snowflake is a problem. So once the people who feel like they're a marginalized group, everything gets balanced out. Everybody's still an individual with their own views, beliefs, and ideologies. And in that society, if you're outspoken about them, you die. So it's just, you need to be a part of the crowd. You can't be an individual. You can't be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's political correctness at its extreme, isn't it? Watch what you say. Be careful all the time. Don't say the wrong thing.
And the thing about Clarice is she was very innocent in her questions and everything. And
she was curious.
Nothing was too challenging of the norm.
Like just something of thinking, are you happy? Just made this guy.
Yeah, it was such an uncomfortable question. Right, that's not the type of thing that society talks about. So her asking that question, completely caught him off guard. Well, what were the questions she was asking? I don't even remember.
Like, he asked,
in love?
Yeah, he asked, do you love your wife?
Yeah, that's one of them. But like he was just completely caught off guard.
He asks him like what something tastes like or smells like wine. Like it's just something that just different, like things that he would have never stopped to think about.
Yeah. I really liked her monologue about how the fast drivers think of the grass as a green blur and and the bushes as this blur and flowers as that kind of blur.
Yeah.
Because
you just see everything passing by so fast, like nobody stops to, I think in that quote, stops to smell the roses. Like literally nobody does that ever.
I do.
Yeah, that was her whole thing. Is she just wanted to experience life. Like it wasn't even anything crazy that she was after. As I said, it didn't really challenge society. She just wanted to be slower about it. She just wanted to enjoy life and take in the things around her. And everybody else was just more interested in watching TV and driving really fast and running over small animals, apparently.
Yeah, and getting into fights. She says the quote where people just randomly start beating each other up. Like that just happens.
Yeah, which is
that was probably the inspiration for Fight Club.
Let's see.
So
like she talked about, she liked walking in the rain.
Yeah, and
You know, and they're
feeling the
like,
rain. Yeah.
yeah, she's like, rain even tastes good, and it's like, oh wow, what a weirdo. It's like nothing that she said was like crazy or out there. She's just a normal, curious girl. As when she like 17.
I
You know,
think so.
you should be curious at the age of 17. So she was just normal, you know, wanting to learn about the world around her. And so she couldn't go to school. Well, I assume her family didn't want her to go to school because she was strange and she would have been killed, which ended up happening anyway.
Oh, well, her killers got it too. In the end, karma.
Or she asked him about the moon, and then
Yeah.
like he was caught off guard by that because he's like he hadn't looked at the moon. And then what is it? She's like, if you look, there's a man in the moon, and he was like, wow, well, I didn't even realize that. Like he hadn't even paid attention to the world around him at all.
Yeah, I think in the entire book, the his dialogue with Clarice was the most interesting part.
Yeah, well, as I said,
What
that was
about
what opened his eyes. He realized he hadn't even been looking at the world around him, and then when she died, had it not been for the woman lighting herself on fire, I think that eventually would have went
But
away, and he would have just fallen back into being part of the in group.
but the thing is, some of these seeds had been laid before because he had met Faber the year before that, and he
and he
hadn't done
had been
anything about it.
collecting.
And apparently, he'd been subconsciously taking
Well,
books for a while now, so that's why he
well,
had
as I
like
said,
20 of them
that
hidden.
goes back to what I was saying about you can't be an individual and express yourself. So he was doing those things, but he never would have stood up like he did and done
Yeah,
anything about it.
right.
Because he went to Faber because he remembered, oh, I'm pretty sure that guy had a book, and he was really nervous about me, so I'm gonna go talk to that guy because he wanted him to make a copy of the Bible so
Yeah.
that it continue to exist, so he could turn it in and not get in trouble and go back to his life. But had there not been a Faber, then
Yeah,
he
so
would
this
have
is when
just
Faber
accepted his
just
lot in life, thrown the book in the because his whole thing of when he went back and there was the woman's club, I can't remember what the little tea party or
yes,
whatever,
yeah.
and he got all mad and he read the poem from the book. He shouldn't have done any of that, but none of that would have happened without Faber.
Yeah, but Faber's in his ear, so he has an earpiece, and Faber's telling him to stop. Like, what are you doing? Stop. But he gets so enraged by these women and the way that they're just sitting there and they're just shells with no feelings, with nothing. There's
Right, but you remember the conversation he had with Faber before that. Right, what Faber was talking about the university professors and how it died out, and they used to teach people and how scared he was and everything like that. And Montauk got angry with him and started ripping pages out of the Bible. And then Faber's like, no, I'll help you, just please stop, and started crying. So I was saying that's where his flip was, and that was Faber's input that caused him to go off down that trail. And then when Faber was trying to walk him back to be more collected and decisive about what he was doing, you know, like more can't remember what you call it, deliberate with his decisions and his actions. It was too late. Like the switch had been flipped from with Faber from his anger because Faber was trying to act like he didn't have any books. He didn't want to. He's like, I'm too old. You know, we can't print this book. He's like, no, you should just go turn it in. And then it made him mad because he was trying to find somebody else. But had you taken Faber out, there would have been no substitute of someone for him to go to. He'd eventually just went back to what he was doing before, which was occasionally stealing and hiding a book, but never really standing up to anything.
And so when he reads the poem and snaps at that lady, so this is what he says to her when he like completely like flips out at her, and he says, "Go home." Montague fixed his eyes upon her quietly. "Go home and think of your first husband divorced and your second husband killed in a jet and your third husband blowing his brains out. Go home and think of the dozens of abortions you've had. Go home and think of your damn cesarean C-sections too, and the children who hate your guts. Go home and think about how it all happened and what you did to ever stop it."
Right, and as I say, like I think his interaction with Faber before that is what led him to having the stones to actually stand up and say that. Like those things were there, but like his wife, and they're saying that, like Lady Bastard was saying, she subconsciously was trying to commit suicide because she's miserable.
Yeah.
He would have went back into that because other people, I guarantee, have those opinions too, but they keep them to themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
And the part where these women were talking about their children was probably the most horrifying part of the book.
Yeah. What do? They would just send their children like away to essentially boarding schools, I guess.
Like, but even that, they were talking about their figures, their fucking figures, you know. Instead, why ever would you have children? They ruin you. Like, of course they're talking about their figures, their hips and whatnot. And then, oh no, I just had a C-section. The C-section still ruining. I was just, you know, this part is really horrific. And then how they send them away, how they don't basically meet them, like, how many times? Like 3 times a month or something like that.
Yeah, or like a year. Very.
And
They're
Wait,
just
that's
no.
what he says. Like how your children hate you.
Yeah.
yes, and they laugh. They
Well,
know
that's
that their
society
children
today.
hate
Think
them
of
and
how
they
selfish
laugh.
people are. Think of how selfish parents are, right? Where people used to have kids and they were working to have a future for their children. Like we were talking about immigration with somebody, I don't remember, but they were talking about how shitty life is for immigrants who come to the United States because they want a better future for their children. And now we have a society where people, even when they have kids, you know, they're getting the nanny so they can go out on vacation, you know, go to like France for a couple weeks, and then they have like somebody watch their kids, or
Yeah.
the younger single mothers who have their mom basically raising their kids so they can keep going out and partying and things like that. And that whole societal part where we had where people were trying to give a better future to their children is dying away. And you have more and more of these parents who are selfish individuals, and like they have a kid, but it's kind of like, yeah, I have a kid, and the kid
But
isn't nearly as important as it should be.
they get a kid for their egos, or for, you know, some of those single mothers. I don't know. Like, I've watched some of Stefan Molyneux's stuff on Stefan Molyneux's channel, and gosh, you wouldn't believe. Like, they
Yeah.
get girls get pregnant so that they can trap the guy into child support and basically get set up for life, and
Yeah.
things like that. Or they get their trophy children and they turn them transgender or whatever else is trendy so that they get the you know, everyone's attention basically.
We were just taking a moment to absorb all of this. I mean, it's pretty spot on in so many ways. I don't know. So okay, so as the plot continues, so Faber is in his ears. He freaks out at these women, and then he finally goes in to turn in the book, to Beatty. And they sit, and it's like a whole awkward moment where they sit and they play poker or something. And you also realize so Beatty says quotes from books. So clearly this guy is well read. So he's read some of these
Yeah, he
books.
said that when he was talking to Montag, that he used to bring books home and then he would read them and then take them to get burnt. And he said that was his
There's
whole thing.
nothing
He's like,
good in
they're
that.
not worth reading. Don't bother reading them. I read a bunch of books. He's like, they're stupid.
So
It's a waste of time.
how does he get away with reading books? So if you read the books but you still say what the status quo is that okay?
Do you
Well,
want
what he was saying was that he that you know firemen take books home all the time. It's okay, and he's like, even I did it, and I took the books home and I read them, and he's like, they were nonsense. He's like, they were stupid. And they didn't help anything. They detracted
They
from
contradict
having a
each
happy
other.
life. Yeah, exactly. That's what
um,
his whole monologue. That's what it was about. Was how the books were so stupid and they caused division between people and disagreements, and society's so much better without them. But that he was curious and he read them, and so he knows that's how it is. And Montauk doesn't need to do that. So
Okay.
he did. He said he read a bunch of books.
Okay.
do you want some cheat information that is not in the books but Bradbury, you know, disclosed in
Sure.
the interview? Okay, so he says he really regrets not adding some info into the Beatrice character because he's really fond of him. And
Okay.
he speaks about Beatrice's motivations, and basically it's a very interesting story actually, because he basically he was like Montag. He believed in books and everything, but and then essentially books, can't save you from
Yeah, and
stuff
Montague tries to
happening
do
in
that,
real life.
right? Like he tries to find the answer in these books and he starts reading them desperately to think like maybe the cure is in here.
Yeah, and it's sometimes tragedies just happen and you can't stop them, and nothing in those books can save you, and that's why he was so angry at those books, and that's why he, despite having read a lot, still justified reading it. And actually, Bradbury really regrets not having added a scene where he takes where basically Beatty takes Montag to his home, and in his home he has a whole library of books,
Oh.
thousands
Yeah,
of books.
he added that that was added to the play. This is when they first did the play adaptation. The actor who was playing the chief had brought that up and said it would help
Yeah.
the character development, but he never added it to the book.
That's
Yeah, because
interesting.
he said,
But it's in the play if anybody
Yeah.
wants to go see it whenever they have it. If you live in the big old city, I'm sure it'll happen.
I think I would actually enjoy that way more than reading the book.
Of course you would, because as we've already clarified, people
Hi,
don't want to
I-
read books. We're
I
already
found
on the precursor of book burning
But
society.
I just found that the book was a little too wordy. I don't know. It was, yeah. But I
I
guess
told-
flowery.
guys, I told you that Erwin would make a grand entrance.
Eventually,
finally,
Somebody told me the wrong time.
I said 2 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Oh my god.
yeah, you just don't pay attention.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
I said he'd be
So
fashionable.
now that you're here, do you want to share your thoughts? We're kind of going through the series of the books, and we've talked about some of it, but we'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
What have you guys covered so far?
Everything.
Not yet.
Oh,
We
yeah.
haven't
Well,
yet
a lot of
covered
things tie
the
back
chase
into each other.
sequence.
They're trying to do it in like a timeline, like basically
So
going
we're
from point to point, but too many of the things tie in from the different
Yeah.
parts.
But
Yes.
we haven't yet, cut the chase scene and the hobos and
Yeah, so
anything
right
of the
now
sort.
we were kind of progressing through the part where Montague is returning the book to Beatty, and they're sitting around and they're playing poker, and he keeps going to wash his hands.
Oh yeah,
And
it's
so
all
that's where
shaken
we
and
are.
stuff.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna take a quick bathroom break. But Erwin, now that you're here, please.
I'll take your place.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Let's say. I'm trying to think of that part of because like I was listening to the stream, but I don't know how far you guys got into it. The entire time he's nervous, right? And it feels like Bately. Is that how you say his name? The guy in charge of the firemen.
I thought it was Beatty.
Beatty.
I call him Bately Betty. It feels like he did the exact same thing as Guy did, because it's like he did it from experience as well. He took a book and tried to read it, but then they burned it for him. Like he almost did what Guy did.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he
that's the
doesn't
thing
accept
is that whole when he goes to work to turn in the book, he decided he was going to give a different book than the actual book, and he was all nervous because he was afraid whether or not the chief knew. But he had already fucked everything up because he did the reading of the poem to the other wives, and they reported him. And then the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
report during the poker game where he was like, no, we'll finish this game. And then Montag said that he was out. So they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go to the fire now. It was because it was his wife that turned him in the last time.
Mhm.
And I guess he just wanted to, he was just toying with him, wanted to see what he was going to do, what was going to happen.
And let's just take a quick look into what type of idiot Montag was. I mean, he could have made photocopies of all the books he had.
Where?
What do you mean where? He
Well,
had
remember the old man? He said he had a person who can copy it.
No,
Yeah,
but
okay. Where are photocopiers located? They're in like public places, like libraries, but
You
libraries
go
don't
to
exist anymore.
photocopy.com.
Well, I was gonna say, like, where would he go to get a photocopy?
He had to do it like in
That's,
person, and
I
they would
think
know.
that's
Exactly, and then he would be trying to copy a book that's supposed to be burned, and then he would be
No, but
reported.
have you never guys been students? You just take a photo of a text, like
This
spies,
is
you know.
1950s
With what?
technology.
With what?
He's
Yeah.
gonna have a big
What
ass
would he have used
Polaroid.
to do that? What would it?
So that's why I say that you know, basically Bradbury looked into the future quite well, you know, and he predicted, you know, how cool TVs would be and the whole interaction, but he forgot that he didn't think that everybody would have a camera.
Yeah,
Right,
because
but
it wasn't
what
common.
you're forgetting is the book burning and all that stuff. Think about the big thing about the internet. Like Google is so big because Google started out as a way for you to find things to read. You know, articles and books and things like it. Archive things for students for education. Clearly, in this dystopia, that kind of education doesn't exist. So all you have is the TV and the entertainment that they give you,
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
capability to go out and find your thing. Like if you look at Clarice, she was killed for being different and asking questions. So the kind of technology that we have that helps us to go find answers wouldn't exist because it would also be something that would be destroyed, just like the books.
Like every
Well, yeah.
Google search is a question, pretty much.
No, technically, you know,
Exactly.
what with our selfie culture, I think our selfie culture would fit into the 451 Fahrenheit pretty well. What with the narcissism and everything.
Actually, yeah, it would just be like every single person would have the dog face. Every single person would have the flower hat thing.
Frederick said, you do have the printing press, obviously, but those machines aren't exactly small. And that was the thing. Montag went to Faber to try to find a place where he could print it in private without getting caught.
Isn't
that was
that where
the whole
Faber
reason
tries
he
to go
went for
to?
Faber.
Yes.
Yeah, when
yeah,
Faber
he was
leaves.
going to take the book to somebody he knew that would do the copies. Was the whole thing.
He's like write it down himself with the pencil, paper, you know.
No.
Do it
Well,
the
where they get to the
Atrocities
end of the
way.
book is kind of where he ends up is kind of what their solution is an interesting one, but I guess we'll get there.
Did you guys talk about the way the society was?
Just how everyone was numb and after instant gratification. We think that everybody had some sort of underlying depression. We talked about Mildred's suicide.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of suicides in the story because did you guys get to the part where like the two friends of his wife were talking?
Yeah.
They were just talking about a suicide, like it was like talking about butterflies walking by, you know, like it was just nothing to them.
There's I mean, and a Lady Bastard was talking about just the way that whole part where they were talking about their children, and
just giving the abortions is like willy nilly. Yeah,
I mean, someone asked us to bring up the abortion thing again.
Well, yeah, like that's exactly how it is nowadays. That like they just want to make it so that the people don't even care. And another thing I noticed is that when they talk about death, care, and that's what movies have been doing to us recently. And video games, it just makes people not even care if there's a dead body because it just becomes routine, like it just becomes part of their life. Yeah.
And I think about I don't know anything about people who operate I can't speak anymore. Operate drones and do those strikes for Mr. Obama. How do they feel?
Yeah.
Do they? I really
that's a
it takes away
really
the
good
human
point.
element.
I didn't even think of that.
Or what?
Of like you just with the press
Like,
of a button, you could take a life and be distant from it.
This was the whole thing I was trying to talk about to Mycroft, who was supposed to be in the chat over here, but I guess he's not going to show up. That's what I was saying. Like I was talking about how bombing China would result in tens of thousands of Chinese deaths, and then you have the people who would be, oh, we need to stop doing that. But when you're talking about the troops dying in wars, like that's a movie that comes out every couple of months. They're not going to care nearly as much about that. But his position is that we would be completely indifferent to the death of the civilians. I was like, well, they wouldn't be because you're seeing little kids and women being blown apart. But when you're talking about death in general. Like they're talking about suicide and running over small animals, and like Erwin said, you're seeing the death in television and movies. Like movies are constantly striving to make death look more realistic, and you become really detached, and it has to be put in your face for you to actually realize the implications of
But
it.
I mean, Amanda is saying death is a part of life and should be accepted, but also respected. I think that's the big difference. Like,
There you
even
go.
now, when someone dies, even in the movies, it's still a significant event. Like, it's only in those like blockbuster action movies where there's like people dying, but like when you get to know a character and they die in a movie or a show or in a book, it's, well, I mean, okay, not book, but in a show, it's still kind of an event. It's still significant. But I think the difference with here in this book, it was like an indifference to death, because you didn't even know this person. Like, why would you care if they died if they were just this empty shell, right? Like, they had no impression on you. It wasn't adding to your life. Like, that's why death is hard for us, because it's the loss of a person that you cared about.
Right,
And when
which
you don't
you
care
have
about
to know them
anything-
to care. It's like the movie, what is it, the A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie? When they blow up the
Yeah.
Death Star, I was like, you have to think, there's easily like 250,000 people on that thing. That thing was the size of a small planet. Like, it was bigger than a normal sized moon, and it's full of people. Like, it was a fully functioning station. I was like, so in this movie, they killed about 250,000 people in a heartbeat, and then everybody celebrated it, and nobody thinks about it. I'm saying the Hollywood desensitizing us to death and seeing, the gore, the gorier the better. You have your
Exactly.
horror
Yeah.
flicks, which are suspenseful, but they're entertaining, and people want to watch more. And then
They want the people to die.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
people get like movies like Taken.
What the fuck is
and,
Hostel? Why do people even watch that movie? Like, at least
Hostel.
Saw, they were punishment. These people, had a purpose. With Hostel, there's no purpose except for just pure torture.
Yeah.
Right, and people are into that. And that's
And
what
I
I'm
like
saying is
how-
that's what they've created a society who wants that line to be pushed more and more. Right.
And
So
I like how no one.
this happened in this movie. It was pretty cool. I wonder how they're going to top it in the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
Yeah,
and constantly trying to top it, trying to make death look more realistic as they go through, trying to kill more people, more explosions, more violence, more.
I just like how no one ever cares in these movies about those guards. You just go and shoot those guards.
Yeah.
And actually, Austin Powers actually had sort of a parody of that when they shoot some guard and he still has a few minutes. My wife, my kids, whatever. And they totally humanize that guard character, which doesn't happen anywhere. And even if other deaths you see are dramatized and you care about those characters, no one cares about collateral damage people.
It's strange that they still found it funny, though. I was in theaters when for that Austin Powers movie, and people still laughed at that guard dying, crying out for his wife and children.
But
It was a joke.
Laughing.
That's the thing. That was the joke. Like, how no one cares about a guard. Fuck him. Right? He's not a main character. Just fucking kill him.
Well, you know
And
what
that's
else is
I'm
good in
saying
movies?
with the military. Like, the military goes to war. The thing that gets society to be all anti-war isn't the death of the service members. It is like occasionally, you see the blown up guys, missing his legs and an arm, and he's got shrapnel wounds all over his face. That'll do something. But it's the civilian death, the women and the children getting killed in real life that it takes to actually get the public outcry about the horrors of war. The actual people who are killing each other, they don't really give a shit about that. That's fine.
Just
They're
remember,
just nameless, faceless soldiers.
As long as the soldier's skin is white, you're supposed to care. But if it's not, then screw them.
You got that backwards.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
they literally made all the stormtroopers wear the exact same helmet to continuously dehumanize them, and they
no,
made
they
them
were
white.
supposed to all be clones of the same person. They're supposed to be identical.
Originally.
Well,
Now
no.
there's black
I was about to
clones.
say that in video games and
But
movies.
no, they're not clones now. In number
Well,
7,
hold
they're
on.
not clones anymore.
In video games and movies, they usually have them wearing a mask just to take away the face, so that there's
Yeah.
no way that you can see them as a human. You almost see them as a robot, even if there's a human behind the mask.
Yeah.
And that's why it really does, like, it gets to the point where we just see that as a robot, and then in the video games we see it as a robot even when there's a face now. like in the
Rick and
I
Morty
mean,
movie or something.
I
Guys,
don't
guys.
think we're there yet. That like I think people are still able to distinguish fiction from reality. But I mean,
Not really.
It's not that we can't
I mean,
determine the difference; is that we don't care anymore.
okay.
Yeah,
I guess
like
that kind of
we
ties
know
in.
it. Is that we just don't care anymore?
Do you remember that joke from Rick and Morty? Say it's okay, the robots. It's okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're like robot kids or something.
No, fucking Rick told Morty that it's okay to kill them. They're just robots. And Morty shoots one of them and he explodes and starts crying out for his wife and kids. He's like, I thought you said the robots. He's like, no, they're bureaucrats. I just don't respect them.
About right. So it's the same thing. Like in they otherized the Jews in real life, and Germany, the German people who weren't actually killing them turned a blind eye to it because they were different.
Because they're Jews.
As I'm saying, they differentized them, and now they're not the same thing as us. They
Tell me, Trigger, do you care
dehumanized
about
them,
Jews?
right? Of course I do. They're my people.
Oh. You need to find people.
But what they did was, and it's the same thing. Like you'll hear
Everybody-
the SJWs talk about like America only cares when it's white people. Like they're indifferent to the struggle on the continent of Africa, and they're kind of right. There is a little something to that. The African continent is Africa. It's not us. We're others, right?
Yeah.
That's that national identity taking its toll. But Hollywood takes it to the extreme, and so like Taken. They're Europeans, and he's just slaughtering hundreds. He probably killed over 1,000 in every one of those fucking movies, and we're supposed to not care. Like they're bad European people. Like he shot, what was it, that French cop that was his friend because he didn't give him enough information, and he's the hero of the movie. That's the good guy doing the good things, right? He wasn't seen as like I know the movie didn't even try to portray him as being was it the anti-hero where he's still doing the right thing, but he's a bad person, like the Punisher, right?
Yeah.
The anti-hero.
That wasn't even the narrative in Taken. He was just a good guy. He did good things, so everything he did was good, to include shooting a police officer who was not involved in the crime.
Okay.
And we're supposed to accept that. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Did anybody else watch?
He was French. Who cares?
Did anybody else watch Hitman?
No.
Agent
We're talking
47.
about a book here.
Okay.
In that movie, holy crap,
ahead.
everybody dies.
No, my point was that the entertainment industry, like in the
Okay,
book,
guys.
it's all about entertainment.
Let's get the fuck back on track. Clearly,
I'm talking about the book.
He
Yeah,
is. Just,
we're talking about how the
Go back-
dehumanization
back
of
on
humans.
subject.
You're interrupting me while I'm talking about the book to say let's talk about the book.
I just heard the third movie reference. Back on track, guys. Back on
No, I
track.
said
Let's
I
gonna go
brought
back
up
to this.
movies because in the book they desensitize people through the entertainment. Entertainment
Right.
consumption is the most important thing in society, and I'm saying our society is going that way. That's why during the Hillary Clinton campaign they had all the celebrities coming out and talking because
Yes.
our society's already
I
shifted
know.
to the Hollywood celebrities are the most important people in our society. Like
And
Kim
look at
Kardashian
Trump
is
winning
famous for being
himself.
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah. Like,
And that's also related to the book because there's the part where she's watching TV. There's two clowns chopping each other into pieces, and people are laughing in the background.
yeah.
Boom, back on topic. Okay, so
That's what I'm saying. We're talking about how our society is parallel to what
Yeah.
the book is, except we're in the early stages of what the book becomes.
because remember in the book, every time the wife, what's her name?
Mildred.
Mildred. I want to say Montague. Okay, so Mildred, she's always watching TV and always with the seashells in her ears, the earphones.
Yeah.
TV. What do you see her watching? She's watching. They even have a part where they're changing channels constantly, and there's a game show where they win prizes. There's the comedians, the two clowns. What else was there? I kind of forget. But basically, it was all senseless, pointless things, which is
Yeah.
what daytime television already is. And then back in the 50s, that's what they had. Talk shows where they
Yeah,
talk to
all
celebrities.
the time. Yeah.
That's
the
what it was
50
because
shows.
it was the time of just forgetting about the world around us. And they had that because if you learned more about communism, they were worried that people would try to be communists like how we have nowadays.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
says, "Why have them worry?" That was the quote that I kind of opened with. Like,
Right.
if you think
But-
you have a
Well, he also was saying that they need to be distracted.
But I'm thinking, what if America in this world is already communist and they're worried about people wanting to be capitalists?
Yeah.
And but
Because it feels like a very communist world in America. You know, I'm assuming it's America in Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, it is, I think.
Yeah.
Because he says
Okay,
he remembers that he met Mildred in Chicago.
Oh yeah, and they also mentioned the Benjamin Franklin and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was another thing that Benjamin Franklin gets described. Hold on, where is it?
As the first firefighter.
Yeah, as the first
Yeah,
firefighter.
the first fireman.
Yeah, fireman.
Yeah, why? Does
They
anyone?
rewrite history. He's an American hero.
They rewrote
Oh.
history. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
because it's all about
That's like what they
Americanism,
do now.
Americana.
There's a lot of history where if you actually look at the real history, you're like, that's not what I was taught.
Yeah, remember how like a lot of times in school they don't like to say how America started this, They say America started slavery. You know, apparently.
Right. Like
Yeah.
Frederick Grimm just said, Wikipedia claims he wrote 451 in response to McCarthyism. We already covered that, and in interviews with the author, he outright says it's a response to Nazism and the rise of communism, and it had nothing. McCarthyism hadn't even happened when he started writing the book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
Like straight from the author said, no, that's not true. But still, Wikipedia
he just
today
predicted it.
says it's McCarthyism. Well, no, McCarthyism we
Exactly.
agreed was a good thing
And
because it was
do you
fighting this
remember-
very thing.
Didn't you find the elections in the when they were talking about elections in the book pretty funny?
Yeah,
How
well,
they
didn't
had-
they say he was so handsome and the other guy was too
Yeah.
ugly?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was always frivolous things.
He had good
Which
policies,
is what people
but he was
do.
too ugly, and that is how American politics is today.
No, I
Which
think
is
that was
why, like,
also-
Trump is the anti-all rules in politics in the U.S. But people were saying how handsome Obama looked, and people were saying that Bush he was handsome with Southern charm, right? And same thing with Clinton, he was handsome, and it's like these are they're describing people on their looks. Nixon lost
Same
to
with
Kennedy because he was sweating on TV in the first televised
Yeah.
debate, and because he was sweaty, he didn't look as attractive as Kennedy did.
What about the
Same
Canadian
when people wanted to
Trotsky?
hire the Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
And Trudeau's a fucking model.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh,
There's another thing I also noticed in the story where did anybody ever hear anybody mention a grocery store?
No.
no.
Even with the wife?
No.
The wife never even mentioned shopping?
But she was cooking something. At one
She was
point.
picking berries in the backyard, yeah. But but that's what I'm saying. There's almost no commerce. There's no consumerism anymore. There's no more buying. I don't even know they have money in the story.
Well,
I know,
she but she asks him because to work more so that she can get a fourth TV, like for the fourth
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah, no, I remember.
So that was the only reference.
And
to, like,
there
work.
were remember the word advertisements like the dentifrice blah blah blah. When,
Yeah,
when
the
that
dentist
stream of
thing.
consciousness was going on.
Yeah, when
And-
he was on the subway.
Yeah, but it feels like there's no more stores. It feels like the people just buy it somehow.
It could just be like online, like inside. You just don't leave your
Yeah.
house. Like everything is just delivered, kind of thing.
Yeah, I felt like you call them and then deliver it because that was a time when they had delivery for things. Like if you buy a mattress, they
Like the
delivered it. That was like when
milkman?
that's when it started.
Oh, like the milkman delivering babies.
Yeah,
and
like the
milk?
milkman. Yeah,
butter.
there was the milk woman. She'd squeeze her titty right there in front of you.
No, it was a non-process. Well, no, that was the big thing. Was that the milkman was fathering a lot of kids because the husband was at home, and then they didn't want milk delivered
Yeah.
anymore because they felt that their wives might be sleeping with the milkman. But it used to be fresh, unpasteurized milk. But because they moved it to the stores where you go and pick it up, they had to pasteurize it so it would have a longer shelf life. Yep,
Yeah.
that's cool. See, that's the
oh.
start. Fucking cucks insecurity.
I just want to kind of go through just as we going through like the events of the story. So Montag, he's with Beatty. He goes to return the book. They're sitting around and they're playing poker, and Beatty starts saying like contradictory quotes or something from
Yes.
the books that he reads to try to confuse him, and Faber's in his ear and he keeps telling him to like, don't let him fool you. He's trying to trick you. He's trying to upset you. Just stay calm, kind of thing. And then an alarm sounds and they have to go because when they're firemen, and they go and he realizes that they're in front of his house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is when he realizes at that moment, Mildred gets into a cab with her suitcase, and she's the one who has called him in and has betrayed him. And then at this point, Beatty forces Montauk to burn his entire house. And once he's done that, Beatty places him under arrest. But then after that, he still continues to start. And this is what Lady Bass
Well,
starts.
he never took the torch away.
Yes. So he puts him under arrest, but he still has the torch. And then he starts like attacking him, right?
Yeah.
And what I kind of that part I don't know. What was he trying to say? What was he attacking him with?
The Hound?
No, the Hound then comes to attack him. But what is Beatty saying to egg Montong on?
Oh, he was saying something about Clarice, or that she. I don't remember really well because it was really weird the way he phrased it. But wasn't like he said Clarice was a spy?
Hard to follow.
Did he say that Clarice was put there on purpose?
Is that what happened?
I'm not sure. It sounded like that when I was reading it, where they had Clarice there on purpose to set him up. Like to trick him into.
It sounded like that, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. At least that was definitely not how the author himself talked about Clarice.
It would be interesting if that actually happened.
Yeah, but I thought that as well, but I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah, but yeah, I was saying something how he was set up. He pretty much gave in to sin. Like that. There's a lot of Bible references, and in this case, sin is reading.
Yeah, it's the new religion.
Yeah, but it's like their idea of sin, like the world, everybody they're supposed to obey. That's technically their idea of a sin, and so that's why he had to burn down his whole house because he gave up on his previous life. So the house was a representation of his previous life.
Yeah,
isn't the last thing that Beatty says a quote from Caesar?
Yeah, well, he says, hold a gun to a man and force him to listen to your speech away. What will it be this time? Why do you not belch Shakespeare at me, you fumbling snob? There's no terror, Chrysis, I don't know how to pronounce that, in your threats, for I am armed so strong in honesty that they'll pass by me as the idle winds, which I respect. How's that? Go ahead with your second-hand litterer, pull the trigger. So he's egging him on, telling him to...
Well, yeah, he believes that because fucking Cassius is the one that goes after Brutus with Octavius and Julius Caesar. So basically, because they kill Caesar, Brutus and the Senate kill Caesar to restore the Republic because he's becoming a dictator. So basically, Cassius is considered like the anti-hero against Brutus because the whole restoring the Republic and freedom and the way society is supposed to be for people. So Beatty is seeing him as Cassius, who's coming to, who made the bad decision to be against what's right. Like he embraced books rather than what's best for society, because Beatty saw that books were bad for society and they caused problems, and people got sad from reading books looking for answers and things like that. Like his whole view of books were that books hurt society as a whole. So he sees that bad. No, right. So him as the book burner, he's like Brutus, keeping the Republic safe, and then Montauk is Cassius, who's coming to kill him for trying to protect the Republic.
So he's saying, go ahead, try to be a hero. Right. Quote, say how these things are so important. Try it.
Like here, they say that it hurts society, but in actuality, it's hurting government, because government can't control you if you ask questions. If you have two choices, like they say in the book, it causes government to have to answer.
One choice is better, because
they have to force you to one choice.
Yeah, but we already clarified that the whole society, it was a societal thing, not a government-driven thing.
Yeah, so that
there's a big difference. In this book, it was people. And like we're talking about how people consume so much pop culture today, it's like we're already headed that way where society's gonna be like, they're already talking about like I shared links in my Discord for those of you who aren't in there. You need to go join. How students were saying that they didn't want to learn about rape, and they're in law school to become lawyers, and they don't want to learn about sexual crimes because it's triggering, right? So they already want to ban teaching rape law in law schools, right? So we're already seeing the start of banning books, banning,
banning rape.
Right, alt-right books, and the alt-right wanting the ethno state, like those things should be banned.
This
Rape
is
law
slightly
should
worse.
be.
This is slightly worse because they're not banning specific books in general. They're banning ideas and topics, like an entire topic.
Well, that's it. That's how it starts.
Yeah,
right?
but
And all the books that are about that topic will have to be banned.
How does a university say, well, okay, it's too many people are triggered by the idea of rape, so we're just going to exclude rape out of the narrative of what it means in law, just so they can keep pushing their narrative of what it means in social justice?
Because it's the narrative, and that's
the whole point of the book.
That was a rhetorical question.
That nothing bad should ever happen, and if it does, it doesn't happen to you, so just ignore it. This
But
is the kind of.
You have to remember that now we are trying to teach men not to rape, so it's okay. There's not going to be any more rape because we're going to teach men not to rape.
I know there's clearly like an oxymoron going here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole premise. That's the whole premise behind the book is that they're banning these books because they were uncomfortable topics and the black minority didn't like this thing, so ban it. The Native Americans didn't like this, so ban it. Like the women didn't like this, so ban it. And then everything gets banned so that everybody can be happy and no one can have their views challenged. Nobody can hear uncomfortable ideas or any of that kind of stuff.
That's why
we've already seen it. It's going on in science, like social science is doing it. The soft sciences are picking it up, and hard sciences have actually had things vilified, like the study of subspecies in humans. It's a real thing, and it doesn't mean any species is less than another. It just means there are differences between groups, and it's good to identify those for a better understanding of the human biology. There's nothing wrong with that, but minority groups felt that it was saying that they're less because some people were trying to use that as evidence.
You mean the species themselves?
Right. Well, as I was saying, like, some white people looked at it and said, well, this right here, which science has shown, means that black people are inferior. So black people said we need to ban this study because it's racist. And now we don't study it anymore. And it's considered debunked science, even though there's nothing to debunk it, rather than people got their feelings hurt by the results. And that's what the book is saying. Like, that's what society turned into was everybody who had hurt feelings, ban it.
But there is some questions of morality in science, though. Like, it should people try to.
But you shouldn't ban. Like, banning experiments on human beings or animals is one thing, but banning the study of something is a completely different thing. You shouldn't ban the study of anything.
Like banning, like the ability to combine Ebola and smallpox and make.
That's what I said. We're talking about the study versus the experimentation. Right?
Right. Okay.
Studying something versus the experimentation and practical application of that study are two different things. But science can be roadblocked by not being able to experiment, but that would be okay because there are some things that, like the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II, before they thought that black people couldn't be pilots because the vessels that went to their brains were too small, and if the sharp turns that the fighter jets made, that they would black out and crash, right? So the Tuskegee Airmen experiments were to see whether or not that science was real. But at the same time, they were doing scientific experiments on people because they were black.
But isn't there people in BLM who think that because white people have lower melanin in their skin or something, they don't have the ability to empathize or something like that?
And I think we do experiments to debunk these things because experiments are necessary in some things.
No, they're saying melanin is the chemical in the skin that allows you to hold soul. It is soul power.
It's watermelon in the skin. They have less watermelon.
Watermelon.
See, this is what I'm talking about. See how they're saying racist things? This is why that study gets banned.
This is the thing. Let me moderate a little bit. This isn't a dumpster fire. You can come on dumpster fire and yell about watermelon and skin all you want, but we're trying to be serious. So now let's get back on topic.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. So no. Well, I'm going to talk about his comment because that's exactly what I'm talking about. He takes that. He says something racist. Some black people have hurt feelings. Now we ban the science. And that's what the
Yeah.
whole book is. Everything that was offensive or hurt somebody's feelings
Well,
just gets banned.
Okay, so
And
interestingly,
Chief believed that
Bradbury.
that's the best way to do it. The chief is like, that's great. That's exactly what we need. Don't hurt anybody's feelings.
And it's not, just the science. I mean, don't they already have trigger warnings for Shakespeare and stuff like that?
Oh my god, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
they-
so
I
for
think I
everything.
heard it. And
Odyssey.
they publish these lists about, which authors of color
Yes,
to read
yes.
instead of these white authors, and which feminist dystopias are better to read than these famous dystopias like 1940.
Yeah, like they warn you about
like that.
books, like don't read this book because it's full of like hate and sexism or racism and blah blah blah.
It's full of truth.
Even when it's not.
Well, ironically, Bradbury himself, and he says he's really sensitive to restrict his free speech, and so he would get letters from people, and they would be objecting to his treatment of females and black characters, and I guess in all of his books, not just this one, and he would get really upset, and he says these are essentially what is growing hostility and intolerance, and is the very first step into book burning. So he's straight up ultimately saying this, right? Like he's not trying to hide.
Yeah,
What his
exactly. Yeah.
And he saw it from history itself with the whole Nazi thing, which was the whole idea came from.
Yeah, the discomfort of the depression, like the Great Depression in the U.S. as we're taught it, how bad it is. It was way worse in Germany, and then Hitler came along and said, "Hey guys, everything sucks. I know whose fault it is. It's not your burden anymore. It's their fault." And then, the Nazi socialism was really good for a couple years until, the Allies showed up and murdered all the Nazis. But, the society got better and everything. Oh, he must have been right. It must have been the Jews' fault because look how good things are getting. We're all going to work. Yeah, fucking do whatever you want with them. And that's the censorship. Well, burn these books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, clearly the guy had a good idea, right? Because he turned the country around. So when they're like, we should ban these books and ban this, and people disagree with it, they're like, yeah, but remember how bad it was before. And they keep going along with it, and had the Nazis not fallen, you see the Man in High Castle and how North America is, and how people that lady defected, and then she gets the physical, like the eugenics test, to determine whether or not she's fit to be part of the Reich.
Yeah.
And people would completely accept that, and that would be the norm. Not too many people would speak up or fight against it. And I think that's how the society in the book was raised up. Over time, more and more things got banned, but it was over a long period of time, not like all at once, and it wasn't government mandated.
But there's people who
Society
still remember how it was before. So that's one of these things in all of these dystopian future kind of books. It does feel like they haven't been going on for that long because there's always people who remember the old ways.
Well, there's always the tipping point. There's the tipping point.
And
book burning and books being banned happened, but Faber was a professor and he taught stuff. And as he said, slowly students didn't want to learn stuff anymore, and this got banned. And this got banned. So
maybe it's suggesting that this can happen that fast too.
Well, no. What he was saying was it was already happening when he was a professor, right? It didn't just crop up while he was there. It was how society was. It just encroached into him.
Yeah,
into the field that he was in, and then after I think he said 20 years or something like that, then they just closed down all the liberal arts colleges and
the libraries and
the libraries got closed. And so it was he watched it deteriorate and progress, and then he kept quiet. Then by the time that he was ready to speak up, it was too late, and the war was over. Basically,
you also have to remember this guy's really old. This guy's ridiculously old. We don't know how we don't know how the age difference is going to be in the future. Maybe the Ethan Bradbury, he was thinking that people can live for 200 years in the future.
Okay, fine, fair enough. There is.
You know what I mean, though? Maybe he thought that people will be really old in the future because it was already progressing.
Think about the difference between the 1960s to now. Right? Yeah, think about Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. They were what? They're in their 20s in the 60s, right? Yeah. Think of how much our society has changed since then. So you're talking. Montauk is somebody our age talking to somebody Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton's age.
Okay.
So do we remember the 60s? No. So for our entire lives, then that's a good, how many years? Almost 60 years right there.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
And that is a long time. Because think of the social change that happens. We've seen the the rapid change in college universities.
Yeah, it's been
from
like 5 years. 5 years.
2013, 2012 is when this stuff started in a small scale, and then all of a sudden it accelerated, which is because of internet and social media. But had this started back in, let's say, the 30s in the U.S., it would spread by ideas. It wouldn't really become a big mainstream thing until the 70s. Oh, wait, that is what happened. But now we have the internet. Everything is speeding it up.
Yeah.
So now everything is happening quicker than it would have in the time that the book was written, that time frame, because of our internet and social media. Like here we are talking to how many people on the internet who just happened upon us to hear us talk bullshit. Social media spreads things out, the sharing, the going viral, and things like that. So these ideas are just spreading a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, what are memes, right? They're self-replicating ideas.
Yeah, so it's just accelerated.
Do they have fireman memes in 451?
Probably. Okay, so
well, we do have to kind of be careful because memes are this. Just the idea of memes is kind of pretty new. But before that, we had like 2 or 3 of them, like Jesus, for example. But the same thing is the memes are being used by the alt-right, the alt-left, the everybody. And they're used quite heavily to actually otherize or dehumanize certain people. And they're going to be quite effective at doing that. So we do have to be careful what kind of memes we use from this point on and how we promote them.
Make a Fahrenheit 451 meme where somebody self-identifies as a book, and then it shows the firemen burning them.
That's actually good. That's great.
Somebody make it. Somebody
and
record
that's another
this.
thing. All the multi-genders, what is it? It's an infinite number of genders, if you ask some people. So the things that you could say or do that would be offensive are infinite.
Yeah.
Right. So everything could be banned, even television. But only the whoever's in charge, I guess you would say, like Hollywood, like you watch, and they say, like I was watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I think it was the season premiere. And they went down to Florida, and all they did was talk shit about Florida was pro-guns.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, why are they even pushing that narrative? And this was before the election. This was before Florida went red. And I'm like, what if shit like that shit talking they do in Florida is why the state went red?
Yeah, exactly.
What if more people saw this shit in the programming and was like, you know what, we're going to rebel against this. Obviously, we need to go right because the left hates us. As a state, they hate Florida. Florida's pro-gun. They're rednecks. They stick their heads in crocodile mouths because they're all hillbillies. Right? Like, this is the shit you see. This is the meme of Florida. Yeah, it's the meme of Florida that you see in Hollywood. So when everything gets banned, then Florida won't be able to, rebel against it and be like, oh, fuck you, we're going to vote for the other side then, since that's how you feel about us. That's going to go away.
I feel like the left is... Pardon?
Like, do people not learn that the more you try to force something to not exist? Yeah, like with prohibition,
That's the thing that the left doesn't understand. Like, stop telling people what to do. Like, you got
it wrong. You got it wrong. See, in the book, it became the societal norm.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying, if you look at society from when the 3 people who were the biggest names in this election, when they were, high school and college age kids, to now, look at how much society has changed and what things are accepted now that weren't then.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so look at the things that the young millennials, the tail end of the millennial generation, versus us at the beginning of the millennial generation, and the things we don't accept that they think are fine, like the mini genders.
And how they turn it into a spectacle, which is another thing. So in the book, well,
no, what I'm saying is that it's gonna keep gaining. So you're like, oh, they keep trying to force this stuff on us. I'm saying the younger generations, they're gonna keep getting churned out in these schools to believe these things, and it's gonna keep going further and further and further until we are in that dystopia.
And then we're the ones who are living on the edges of. So just to get to okay, so he burns his own house. He gets placed under arrest. Beatty starts egging him on, and so he uses the fire torch and burns Beatty alive. And then he goes on the run. He stashes books at another fireman's house and calls the cop and calls the number there, which I think was his original plan. Like, what was his idea of planting books inside firemen's houses and then calling the alarms on them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
it's basically a
Franklin,
subterfuge.
Yeah.
A subterfuge to destroy the firemen so that
They couldn't destroy
you couldn't have firemen because everybody who entrusted the firemen to do the job would have been popping up as guilty, kind of like undermining the cops today, right? Like
Yeah.
all the cops are racist. Racism is everywhere. Accusing people of racism and was it prejudice and police brutality, right? So basically, he was going to do that to the firemen so that there would be no one left to burn the books, so the books wouldn't get burned anymore, and then society would basically devolve back to a society that read books because there would be books.
Right. So that was his original plan. And
which he did do to one fireman.
Yeah. But and then here he makes this comment about how BD wanted to die. So bringing back to the theme of like subconscious suicide that we discussed before. And so then he goes to Faber's house, and Faber tells him he's going to go try to track down someone to for the printing press so that he can make a copy of the Bible, and gives him some clothes, and then tells him to follow the trail, and he'll find more people there. And so he runs and he escapes. He changes the clothes. He gets away from the hound. We didn't talk about the mechanical hound, but we can kind of.
Yeah, it knew. It always knew.
Really, like the coolest thing in the whole entire book, and you guys didn't talk about it.
No.
The spider dog that shoots out lasers. Yes.
I don't like foreshadowing in books when it's like that. It's just.
That's the greatest foreshadowing ever. That one actually got me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
was impressed by it. Like it was like a nice foreshadowing. Even if you can predict it, it was nice how it played out. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. Like the chief knew. Like the dog, what was it? The dog didn't like him. It was like growling at him or whatever.
Yeah, earlier in the book,
and then the chief was like, "Oh yeah, I'll have it checked out." And it seemed like the chief knew something was up with him at the time.
Like, this gotta adjust the negative photons here.
Right. And then later it exposes that Montauk had been storing books. He'd been taking books and storing them. So it's like the dog knew the whole time that. The dog was
like, this guy smells like
it wasn't exactly foreshadowing, because subconsciously he knew he was doing something wrong, and that's why the hound was paying attention to him.
Right, but the book didn't tell you that till later.
Well, see, the thing is that the
that's
dog
foreshadowing.
The dog is a theme for internal guilt. You know, like it's like a robot. It has no soul. It has no emotion. It's just plain cold stone. Iron guilt, where it doesn't try to see you as a good person, doesn't try to see you as a bad person. It just sees you for who you are.
Yeah.
It's sort of,
that's our conscience, you know?
Not really. It's also, not only that, it's also an image of horror, you know, of subconscious horror and uncertainty and whatnot, because that's what Bradbury said.
Well, that's what he's saying, is that you can't change it through emotion or through delusion or anything. It's just going to be exactly what it is.
And so as he's running, the hound is chasing him, and there's helicopters and everything. And so the entire city or town or wherever they are is watching his chase as a spectacle, just like we all watch car chases and police chases.
Mm-hmm. OJ did it.
Yeah.
Right? Remember the white Bronco? Right, just cruising at like 35 down the fucking 91 with no traffic.
There's like a billion police behind him. They all like crash into each other, and then he just like kind of like driving very casually.
Yeah.
And I mean, even now, like they're turning like going after people into spectacle, right? Like even the media, the way that they keep trying to go after people's character and personality and these things and turn it into spectacle. And then in the end, they don't catch him, and they use a scapegoat for him, right? So they don't even bother.
They kill somebody else, didn't they?
Yeah, so they kill somebody else and say that it was Montag. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Montag. And which I always wondered, like, why did they just give up, or like, do they not?
No, they wanted the people. They wanted the people to not worry that there's somebody who got away, because when you hear that somebody did it, then people are gonna be like, oh, I can get away with it too. They want the people to think that they can't get away with what he did, the whole book thing.
Right, it's back to that whole...
back to reality.
Your thoughts are dangerous. And, you know, like Clarice being killed. She
Yeah,
was
they didn't want them to think.
she was
Exactly.
killed in the concentration camp or whatever, or fucking shot down in the streets
The gulag.
for being different, right? So being different is a death sentence, right? It's
Right,
back to
okay.
that how we were talking about people are depressed because they can't express themselves and be individuals, and it's the same thing with that. He had a book, he ran. This is what happens to you when
He
you
well,
run.
he also killed someone, so there was that.
Well, yeah.
Wait, Montek killed someone?
Well, he kills Beatty. He
Oh,
turns
I
the
forgot.
yeah.
Hey,
He also killed the
also,
dog.
I just want to point out that Amanda said it's not internal guilt so much as his anxiety that he's so easily seen through by those around him. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, he's having anxiety. He has anxiety disorder, and now he's with the PTSD. Feel free
Yeah.
to donate to his Patreon, GoFundMe.
Okay, so then
He was triggered by the dog.
he escapes the helicopters and then he follows the trail and then finally he goes into nature, which I think is also supposed to be symbolic here. And there's
Oh, it's about the Bible.
yeah, all these. Well, there's a lot of biblical references. in
Like
this
the whole
book, for
part where he's
sure.
like near the water and near in the river. There's like something about two sides, and it's about the holy city of something. And that's supposed to be like the beginning of the real world, you know.
Yeah.
In the Bible.
Also, it just occurred to me it could be like a sort of baptism, and then he
Yeah.
meets these
Baptism
hermits,
through
you know.
fire.
Yeah, because that he has to get rid of his smell too, right? So it's like he's getting rid of his old self.
Yeah, he got rid of everything. It was baptism through fire, which is like to just destroy everything about you from before and then create a new life.
But it was also that river thing. He was also afraid a bit of. I was thinking more maybe a river, because when he steps out of the river, he meets these hermits and whatnot.
Yeah, and then he wonders if Clarice ever came to walk by this river.
Yes.
Because she was always with nature.
So they bring it back to her again as a moment of just like looking around you and stopping and noticing your surroundings.
And you can also see that Clarice, technically she's supposed to be Jesus. She was supposed to be a martyr.
Okay.
Yes, possibly.
I can see
I mean,
that.
I'm not sure, but I just see it like that. That it's either her or Beatty. But maybe Beatty's something else with the Bible.
Yeah, I'd say it's Clarice for Montag, because she was the start of his redemption arc, and Montag was for Faber, because that was the start of Faber's redemption arc.
Beatty was Muhammad, and Clarice was Jesus. Oh wait, maybe Beatty's Noah or something like that. Maybe he's like the source of the new world, and then like something. Think about it. Discuss it in the chat, guys.
Okay. Okay, so he cleanses himself and then he follows the railroad and he meets a man, and so there's a community of I guess the intellectuals or the book people, and
the
they're
people
living
of the book.
Okay.
The mole people.
And there's a man there who welcomes him, and they just say that they're just this network of book people who sit and memorize books and hope that soon at some time when this society collapses, they'll be able to come and bring back this information and help rebuild it. And they give him a book to start memorizing, which is the book of, I don't know how to pronounce these.
The Quran.
No, it's the Eslicetus. I don't know.
Eslicetus, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the book that they assign him to memorize. But then right at the moment, the city gets obliterated with bombs, and they get to go and rebuild civilization.
Oh, did you guys talk about the bombers and the jet fighters constantly going throughout the whole?
So we haven't even talked about the war. And
so here's the thing that I was thinking: what if the jets flying overhead were not from America? They were the enemy jets.
Yeah. I always thought.
Well, they'd kind of have to be, since the city got destroyed, right?
Well, no. Before
they were going to take out.
Beginning.
Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying. They were going and taking out other targets and working their way to that city.
Well, no, because remember in the very beginning, his wife, she did something with the pills, possibly committing suicide. The jets are so low. It's like an attack position in the sky because
that's what I'm saying. They were bombing other targets, and then at the end they reached the city and took it out.
Yeah, so the entire time America's being bombed, but he doesn't care because he just goes, "Oh, jets again," you know.
Yeah.
No,
Well, that's because the news doesn't talk about it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Not for 1 second did he feel threatened. He just said, "Ah, it's the fucking jets."
Yep.
Just explosions
Okay.
outside. Jesus
Wait,
Christ!
yeah,
I'm trying to watch TV
underlying
here.
war thing. And who?
Because in this
Sorry.
kind of world, I imagine people just like they see the giant nuclear explosion outside. They just like close the blinds, like, "Oh fucking, I'm trying to sleep here."
Hello. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what was the war like? Is that not supposed to be relevant? Like we just need to know there was a war. We don't know who it was against. Why
Yeah.
was?
Well, this is why they don't mention it. It's
It
supposed to be a
basically
timeless.
seems like the war was there for an explanation as to why the city gets destroyed.
Well, no. It's not just that. It's just that there's
No.
always going to be a conflict outside and inside. And the idea to not mention the enemy's name wasn't because he didn't want to say communism. It's just because this book is supposed the story of Fahrenheit 451 is supposed to be a timeless thing. It's not actually stuck inside the 1950 mentality.
Yeah, but
He never said
America
Russian,
getting
never said Chinese.
bombs dropped on them. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
like that type of society, obviously, people are going to fight against it. So the idea is spread like communism does, and then there are
Yeah.
always going to be people who resist it, right? But they
And
don't
plus-
discuss the government really or what the government's doing. It's more over of the book burning. It's just a thing that's there.
Yeah, but the war is also just to say that no matter what, the war is never going to end. No matter what your government is going to be, no matter what your people
I
are
just
going to
thought
act.
it was convenient because now suddenly just as he makes it to this group of people who are waiting for this opportunity, everywhere gets bombed, and so now they get to go and rebuild again. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the war. I mean, a part of me is trying to say how unaware everybody was that there's this going on and nobody was talking about it and showing the
Yeah.
oblivion. But I don't think I like that element of the book. Like I would have
Well, the
liked it
problem-
better if he had just gotten to those people and then, the story. I don't know why
Yeah.
he would have had
The
them getting
problem
bombed.
was that there's a lot of communist wars going on outside of America that we were not involved in. Stuff like the communist revolution in Greece, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Romania. All of these things happening outside of America, and nobody knew about it in America because they didn't want to let people know communism was spreading. They didn't want the fear to be in people. We didn't even know about China until like a little bit later when communist Chinese people were coming into the country. Until like after the whole takeover. I think that's what happened in the days.
So Amanda's saying it's from the point of view of a guy who doesn't care or know any longer who the enemy is and what the cost of the war was.
Yeah.
I like the atmosphere about the war as portrayed in the books too, because when these wives talk about their husbands, he's going for a weekend, he'll be back, maybe. It's always the others who
Yeah, and
die.
then
They don't think about it. They celebrate. It sort of reminds me of what they talked about. The Weimar Republic was before the Second World War.
And
It was
clearly
sort
people-
of desperate. It was sort of described as having a feeling of desperation. There was partying and whatnot. I don't know.
So no one's going to bring up the Phoenix.
bring up
The Harry
Phoenix.
Potter and the Phoenix of Fire.
I was gonna say just before you go to the Phoenix that I guess there were people fighting the war because that lady's husband dies and that's why she reacts because he dies in the war. So obviously,
right, which is why society was so against books because it does things like that to people.
okay,
Let
so
them react to
Because
war.
well, think of the discussion they were having before he read the poem. Oh, she'll get another husband. Oh, it happens.
Oh, just have another
It was no
child.
big deal. Then he read the poem. Then she got all emotional because it was a
out of
poem
nowhere.
about love and loss. And then now she gets emotional about it. Whereas the atmosphere surrounding it before, it was kind of it happens. Guess get another husband.
And she's like laughing and stuff. She's like, "Oh, he's dead." Ha ha ha. Another thing I was also thinking, how many people are working for the government in this kind of world? Because there's
Most.
a part. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a part where they're saying that 10 million troops were being sent out.
Yeah.
okay,
I
wow,
mean, and-
okay.
I mean, like, just imagine how many troops they have in general. Like, how many people? Like, is there a draft in this kind of time?
Of course there is.
Yeah. So a lot of people are just being forced into the military. And what I was thinking while reading it, that's exactly what Hillary Clinton wanted. This is exactly like Hillary Clinton's world.
Yeah, but see, the book, these things weren't government driven. Hillary Clinton's world is everything is made by the government.
I mean,
it's government
not the way
force
that
on the
caused,
people.
like the effect, like the actual
It
situation.
would be a completely different situation because the majority of people would be subjugated rather than creating it.
Well, this is the thing. In Hillary Clinton's world, she wanted the whole war with Russia. There would have been a draft, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm saying that the difference is the society in the book was fine with it, right? Our society,
that's what I'm saying. We are told to be
would
fine
not
with
be.
it.
Well, clearly we weren't because she lost.
I'm saying that's what she wanted. That's what they expected for people to be fine with it.
Yeah, but in the book, people were the ones who drove it. Like the chief expressly says, this wasn't a government mandate. This is what the people wanted.
Yeah.
The people were tired of being confronted with their emotions and things like that.
Well, they say that, but it's usually where the government causes the people to do that.
The news saying the war would only last a day. You know, it'd be
they
over
kept
in 2
saying
days.
Oh, it's going to be a day, 2 days. And that's like probably ever since the 1950s all the way to like Fallout 3 time, like 200 years later.
Fuck, which one is it? 1984? They're in a perpetual state of war.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't the war in Iraq gone longer than both world wars.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
The longest war we fought was Afghanistan, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, fine. The war in Afghanistan.
Vietnam. What about Vietnam? That was like almost like what, 15, 16 years?
Wasn't the whole point of 1984 it was a perpetual war, but not a real war?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were in a perpetual war, and in this book, they probably were too and didn't even realize it.
But it wasn't a real war.
Now we're
They kept using the war as an excuse for the rations and the lack of resources, but it wasn't. But it was all artificial all around.
Yeah.
Right, but in Fahrenheit, the war was real, but it's probably.
But they were trying to neglect it.
Like going on, they're constantly fighting people all the time and just not talking about it.
But another thing
happens somewhere else to other people.
Another thing is that if the jets were going over this major city, no, not major city, but if they were going over the city, the jets were going over constantly. Wouldn't that mean technically America was kind of losing? And the entire city got bombed?
That's kind of what I thought. Like this way of life is not even sustainable. Like at the end of the day, it would collapse. And
now we're going to talk about the Phoenix.
Okay,
that was the whole thing.
Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
Ended up burning down because the Phoenix dies, right? Like the whole mythology around the Phoenix is the Phoenix gets old, it can no longer sustain itself, so it catches fire and it burns down, and then from the ashes, a new young, lively Phoenix rises. And so that's the whole thing, is the society finally killed itself. It basically dies.
Yeah.
You know, the explosion, the city gets destroyed, right? It got so bad it couldn't sustain itself. It had to collapse, which was inevitable. And then the guy that is with Montag, the one that's showing him around the hobo community that's escaping fucking persecution.
The book people.
He references the Phoenix, and he's like, this is like the Phoenix. Like, the city's going to need us now because it's been burned to the ground, so we have to help the Phoenix rise from the ashes. And create, a new society. So society doesn't die, it just gets reborn.
And then Guy, he puts on his Batman mask and says, I am not the hero that they want. I'm the hero that they need.
Wow.
And he flies out into the night.
Well,
I really liked the way they stressed humility as a virtue.
Yeah.
Because before that, there was a line, I don't remember in which exactly passage, but they were, I think it was Montag was in a monologue, and he was thinking, oh, okay, we are rich, but we basically don't care about anything, and maybe that's why everyone hates us. And here you have, a complete opposite. A society where humility is stressed as a virtue.
And kind of Montag's immediance to want to do something about this issue, but when he gets there, they're all like, okay, no, we just have to wait for our time. We have to wait until the people are ready for us. And also the duality of fire being something that destroys, but then when he joins these groups of hobo book people, they're all sitting around a fire, and this is kind of the first time fire is being something that's sustaining life as opposed to destroying.
Yeah.
Oh, there's also another thing I noticed in the story. Does anybody know what the food is?
Do they eat?
They ate. There was a part where food, but it just said it's a meal, it's a food. It's like something inside his mouth. That his mouth is full of food. You know, they don't say exactly what it is.
And it was, I think, Millie, the wife, was cooking after she woke up from her near suicide.
But it doesn't
She
say what she was
eating
cooking.
something.
Yeah,
Probably.
Trigger, and you're right. The quote
So,
thing, he's looking into the fire when he brings up the phoenix, right?
The campfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's talking about the city.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's like a triple reference.
the city is the campfire. They just put. Wait a minute, hold on. Does that mean that the entire city got burned down? All the books inside of it got destroyed?
Probably.
So then that one book that he had, that
Well,
one guy
Faber
wanted.
maybe made it out.
No, all those people memorized the books. That's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So anyone know anything about the book that he gets assigned to memorize?
He already knows the one. It was a passage from the Bible, I think, no?
What was it called? Somebody spell it out and I can look it up.
It was called Escalites.
I think it was from the Bible that he was trying to read on the train. The one about consider the lilies of the field or something like that.
So Amanda makes a comment about how on food, how we've been separated from our food and no longer like what we don't even know what we're eating.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what I was about to say. In that kind of time when Ray Bradbury was writing it, it was when industrialization of food started, where like it was mass producing and GMOs kind of started, and they were starting to do preservatives more often, and it was getting to the point where people stopped knowing
So
what.
they got rid of the milk ban.
Yeah, they were exactly.
Just quickly, I was right. The thing I will consider the lilies of the field, and it's Matthew 6:28. So yeah, he just memorized a passage from the book. It was the one that he desperately tried to memorize, but he forgot most of it, and he was basically very gloomy about it. But the book people said, it's okay, you remember it, you just don't know it.
Oh.
Or no, maybe it was, yeah, Matthew 6:28. Yeah. So
Trigger, you should have read the passage that you posted, because they go, and it looks like, again, we do the same thing over and over again. And I mean, even now.
So read it. You see it?
No, I just read a
Bible.
lot.
It's against our religion.
Fine. Granger looked into the fire. Phoenix. What? Montauk said. There was a silly damn bird called a phoenix back before Christ. Every few hundred years, he built a pyre and burned himself up. He must have been the first cousin to man. But every time he burnt himself up, he sprang out of the ashes. He got himself born all over again. And it looks like we're doing the same thing over and over. But we've got one damn thing the phoenix never had. We know the damn silly thing we just did. We know all the damn silly things we've done for 1,000 years. And as long as we know that and always have it around where we can see it, someday we'll stop making the goddamn funeral pyres and jumping into the middle of them. Basically saying knowledge is power.
Yeah, except is it? Because we have all these books now and people are still repeating the same mistakes over and over
But we're
again.
not teaching them. Like this is my whole thing with the public education system. They don't teach kids. They don't inspire them to go out and think, with rationality. They don't inspire kids to go out and read these books. Like even if you look, I can't remember, somebody was talking about they had to read 1984 in one of their college courses, but they didn't actually read the book in there. They just discussed things about the book, but they never even actually read it. And that's in college where they're paying
things that triggered them.
Right? But in the public school system, they don't teach things. You just have to parrot it back because it's what's going to be on the state exam, and they don't actually teach you to understand these things. And that's the problem. So we are actually losing our knowledge. That's why the younger generations, the more and more, the less they care about these things, the less they know, and the less they understand, because they're not being taught. Yeah, what do they say?
Like, you forget everything that you've studied literally like 3 hours after you've written your exam. Like you study to retain the information.
For short term.
That's what I'm saying, is we need to change our education system to where we're actually educating them and creating thinking people rather than remember this so that you can write it down later. And then that's it.
Short-term memory.
Well, yeah, it's,
yeah,
like the pop culture consumption, like it's short term.
So many things.
Gone with the Wind is one of my favorite movies. I don't know anybody my age who can sit down and watch that whole movie.
I've watched that whole movie. One of my friends, she was obsessed. She even loved the book.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like people
That's
like
a
the book.
big ass book too.
Wasn't.
The people like movie like was it The Notebook? Like I read the book and I watched the movie and
And you have cancer after?
it's similar. Well, no, okay, because the best friend in the book was black, and so there was this whole little racial aspect to it that's completely removed from the movie for no real reason, because it detracted from the love story, but a lot of it was cut down and condensed to make the movie short for public consumption, for shorter attention spans. Like you have cartoons now that are only like 12 minutes long. They take up a 15-minute slot or something like that, and they're like 10 to 12 minutes long. Like they're even shortening the 30-minute episodes now. They're starting to do that.
What to do more advertisements?
Even shorter. So they say, but it's the attention span as well, because you can only watch like 2 minutes before a commercial break.
Well, another thing that's also very interesting is when in movies, the amount of time the screen stays in one place is getting shorter and shorter because they say our attention span.
Exactly.
But it causes our attention span to get
Well,
shorter.
that's what I say.
Before
It's
in the old
both.
days,
It's
the camera
walking
was
the
set
dog.
for like almost the entire movie.
It's walking the dog, and they're because Hollywood's whole purpose is to make the most amount of money. So if we were demanding longer movies, they would make longer movies. But people are like, oh, that movie was too long, it was too dry, it was boring.
But then they go, this movie made more money, so we're going to do it like this again.
They're like
right, so yeah, look at the Transformer movies. They're complete crap. They are shit movies with no substance to them whatsoever. Robots fighting and explosions is the entire thing.
You know who gives them money? You know who gives them money? Kids and teenagers.
That's remember.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are the high-grossing movies, and there's nothing to them.
They don't know anything better.
Right, but there's nothing to the movie.
About Transformers. They're told only about Twilight. They're told only about porno.
That's my point. You're making my point.
Lady Bastard, what are you trying to say?
They're putting chemicals in the water. They're turning the frogs gay.
Damn it.
You have to talk over them. That's the way it is.
I just don't dare to challenge the patriarchy. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, who owns the Hollywood, and what did the WikiLeaks say? I remember that line from someone's emails when they said we were conspiring to build, to create a compliant and ignorant society.
Yeah.
China owns Hollywood.
So Spider is saying schools are about cramming all the concentrated info. It's all about experience, some things, not just a summary interpreted by other people's perspective. And that goes back to the quote that I kind of started with, where they talk about just fill them with information so that they feel like they know, but they don't, right? Like just give them full of incombustible data. Just fill them so damn full of facts that they feel stuffed, but then they feel brilliant with information.
That's what I was saying. Like with the feminists, you can't have a discussion about the things they're talking about. You can't go into the nuance. They only know the face value. That's how public school is teaching the kids, right? So they can remember a quote. They can remember a date. Like the American Revolution happened then, and the shot heard around the world happened then. But they don't understand why it happened, why the Constitution is written the way it is. They don't like think about an American Army general said that the Second Amendment does not give you the right to carry an arm. Like they don't even. This man is a college-educated man who's been in the military for I think it was 28 years at the time. Doesn't even understand that the word "bear" means to carry.
It means animal.
Doesn't even understand that simple word. It means he swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and doesn't even understand simple words that are in it. This is our society.
Bear arms.
Yeah.
Green arms.
Right, he could probably quote the Second Amendment, but he clearly doesn't understand what it means. And if you talk to the kids and you ask them things, like they can't even tell you the amendments in the Constitution. Like they can't tell you what's good or bad about a president or what this means or what that means. They can only answer the question if you ask it the right way.
Like Trigger, do you remember at school, if you try to ask a question to a teacher, they'd be like, oh, you're supposed to know it yourself or something. They give you like a really shitty answer that like it shows that they don't know themselves, even though they're teaching the fucking subject.
They really don't.
They're teaching the subject. They don't even know the subject.
Not knowing themselves. Doesn't Granger at the end, he talks about mirrors, like we need to build mirrors everywhere, and they're symbols of self-understanding and just self-reflection. And someone's been bringing up Jordan Peterson a lot in the book. And so he talks about archetypes and all of these things that that like Carl Jung used to talk about. But this idea of going to really know yourself, like why do you care about the things you do? Why do you believe the things that you do? is this something that you've just been told to believe, or have you really took the time to understand the and that's nothing that we learned in school. Like I don't, and I still feel like I had a pretty good education. But
You'd be wrong.
introspection.
As
Okay.
good as it can possibly be with a government in charge of it. That's what you
Exactly.
say.
I had great teachers. I think I've had a lot of teachers who have made me think critically about a lot of things in a lot of different ways. But
Well, the
but
thing
yeah,
Yet
is
you
that
still
to you,
somehow
they're a
became a
good teacher.
feminist?
I
Are
was
you
never
sure?
an actual feminist. Even when I took a feminist course, I wrote my final paper was how this book was like kind of anti-men, and it wasn't really helping women and men get along better and figuring out how to resolve issues. It was more of a separatist, and I still got an A in the class. I don't know if I would if I was in university now and wrote that.
Oh, you wouldn't, because if that was before 2014,
Blasphemy.
then
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that was in 2011, 2010
Yeah,
when I
see,
wrote this.
2014 is when it ramped up and cranked it up to 11. Like it was
Oh,
starting
even
back
then I
then, but it was
sensed-
hit or miss. Yeah, but I'm saying it was hit or miss as to how indoctrinated the system
And as
was.
much as even if I had gotten indoctrinated, the next year I took evolutionary psychology, and that just explained everything about male and female relationships so much better. So I didn't really.
Objectively, right?
You were
Yeah.
red pilled.
Yeah.
I hate that term so much.
I
The fucking, oh my god, the whole red
know. I
pill
say that.
god.
I say that ironically.
Other people don't.
But
Like the
I think
little-
the mirror itself is, and him bringing up mirrors of just kind of reflect on yourself, and people, and here's the thing, and this is what I've always been confused, like people really believe in things, and I've never actually felt so attached to anything to like, if someone says no, that's not the case, I'd everything would fall
Who
apart.
was
Although
that? Sam Harris? Where somebody was like, he's not a real atheist because he said if he was provided evidence of God that he would believe in God. It's like, but if you listen to him, he's like, I can't 100% say there's no God because I have no way of proving that. But if you could provide me with irrefutable evidence that God exists, then God exists, and I would be religious and I would believe in God. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's not a real atheist. It's like, atheist doesn't mean that you definitively know there is no God. It's that you're saying all the evidence points to that. Therefore, I'm going on the assumption there isn't one. But there is no definitive proof either way.
It's
But
like-
these people, they form these opinions, or should I say they're given these opinions, and they're given the evidence as to why they should have those
Yeah, it
opinions
spreads.
only at face value. And it's basically an indoctrination. Like, this is what you should
Yeah.
believe. This is why you should believe it. But there's no, if you actually took the time to scratch past the surface, you'd see there's nothing behind it.
But the lack of self-awareness is quite fascinating in some instances, Like, you see that...
Well, they're not taught self-awareness.
Exactly, but you see that those anti-flag protesters, protesting against whatever they perceive to be fascism while acting like brown shirts. This is the most fascinating, horrifying thing I have ever seen.
Wait, was there already mirrors in the story before he mentioned mirrors?
I don't
No.
think
I
so.
think in the
There
morning
were
he
the
looked at
TV
himself.
screens.
It was
Remember,
just
because
TV
he actually brought up how, like, if the TV turned off, she would have to see her reflection.
Yeah.
But it's
Right?
dark.
There weren't any mirrors.
Muffled.
Everybody saw the TVs and the
The
seashells.
thing,
Right? Nobody looked at themselves.
yeah,
That was the
because like,
whole underlining theme throughout the book.
I like that thing because when you say looking at yourself through a TV, it's in the old days it was a bowl, it was like a little sphere, so it warped you and it shrouded you in the darkness, so
Yeah.
you can't see yourself fully clearly.
Mm.
You can only see a very small, minute reflection of yourself.
By the way, Erwin, the thing that Mildred was eating was toast.
Oh, she ate toast?
Yes.
The most blandest, driest, retarded, can't even walk food in the world.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know,
I was
I
saying
think-
how
It was really, I feel like they were trying to show that ignorance isn't bliss, right? Like, and I
And
think with
but-
the subconscious
bliss for the
suicide.
government.
But was it because whatever they were doing in the end wasn't working, and their society is still crumbling, and there's people who are constantly either killing themselves or trying to break out every day. There's people burning themselves alive for books. Like what they were trying to do wasn't working.
Yeah, but the thing is that the government doesn't care what is morally correct. It's what they can do as well to control people, and that's what a totalitarian government will do, like Obama.
I don't think that they were actually adequately.
Yeah, but the book isn't blaming the government for anything. The book outright says that it was society.
Yeah,
decision.
who wanted this?
No.
Yeah.
Society demanded it of the government, not the government forcing it on the people.
Hold on, trigger. What is a society that's controlled by the government? It's a governmental society.
Right, but the society forced the government
about
to
the government. A society will be a government society.
Demanded it from the government, not the other way around.
Well, no. If the
That's
people,
what the book outright states.
It says that the people stopped reading the book long before.
Stupid, shut the hell up.
Yeah, society was doing it, and then they demanded more and more of it, and then the government got on board.
But if people are told to say that, of course the people will say that.
I mean, that could be.
But no, if you read
from the government to the people,
person
back up to the government.
But I mean, right now the feminists aren't the government; they're the ones who are demanding these things. So it parallels to right now what's happening. It's people who are wanting this.
Socialist loophole. Where the
no, see, because the person who said that outright said that the history is fake. He knew the real history. He explained that Benjamin Franklin wasn't really a fireman, that they remade that history, and he was telling the truth of how these things happen.
Because of the books he read secretly.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he's saying that this was society that wanted to do this, just like we're seeing now. Where they're like, we need to segregate colleges. We need laws to protect people.
Yeah, who's asking for segregation right now? Is it the government? No.
No, it is a part of society, but you have to find out.
On the other hand, who is in charge of the education that is producing these kids? The government.
Exactly, that's what I'm telling
you. Just the way that it's happening now. Like, they could have been taught to hate these books, and then they turned away from them on their own, and then the government stepped in and said, okay, well, since you don't want them anyway.
After this book was written is when the government created the Department of Education and took over the funding of public education. So this book wasn't even written at a time when the government was teaching all the kids that stuff.
Okay.
But this is not what it was supposed to be feared. This is Ray Bradbury's idea of like the worst case scenario. So he was thinking of the worst thing to happen. Look what we're living in. We're living in his nightmare.
Right. Well, we're going into his nightmare. We're going into it.
Okay, we're before the REM sleep. We're in that part when like the monkeys start flying around, and then like he's in school naked and he forgot to do his homework the day before.
When was the last time there was actual war on American soil?
1776.
No.
1812.
It depends how you want to count it, because there was fighting.
World War II. They had it in Alaska, but I don't think Alaska was part of America yet.
No, I was saying there was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Then you had, before that, you had the Texas fight, which we created Texas into a state, but there were still incursions across the border, and the United States military went down and fucking invaded Mexico, but there was actually fighting above the border before that. The Spanish-American War had some fighting. The American Civil War. It happens quite frequently, but we've never actually been invaded. Because Texas were like, this is America, and Mexico said, no, this is ours. We're going to keep it.
Hold on, 9/11. You keep forgetting that one.
That's not an invasion. That's an attack.
A plane attack. Okay, a plane. Once the dead bodies have hit the ground, that's an invasion.
It is
so someone's saying 1941 was the last time U.S. soil was attacked. And the City Spider is saying in the book they are taught convenient truth, like we recently have been witnessing with removing philosophers from the curriculum.
Right, but here's the thing, right? So this is what's being taught in schools. That came from people. It wasn't a government mandated thing. The people,
Unless
in the 60s, no, in your 60s, you had that counterculture, the hippie movement that everyone loves to talk about. These are the people who became educators to teach the children the better way that society should be.
Trigger, what do you think caused the hippies?
What caused the hippies? What do you mean?
The fight against war. What was
it? Was the counterculture.
War. Though the hippie culture.
There's always a counterculture.
The hippie culture was caused by the communists to fight against the idea of fighting. So that way, everybody would be about peace and love and everything, and they would be vulnerable against a communist invasion.
Well, that was the civil rights movement.
Really?
Not the hippies. Civil rights, not the hippie. You're talking about civil rights movement.
You're not going to see it exactly. I know. I'm not.
No, but you're talking about two different things. What happened, what caused the civil rights movement is what you're talking about, not the hippies.
No. I'm just saying it was accepted by the idea. Like the entire thing is due to communism. We never had that before the entire idea because communism was started in Russia like what, like the 1930s?
Before that.
Before that,
the
okay,
first one
even
was
better.
in like 1905, and then the actual Lenin Revolution was like 1917.
Well, I mean, Loki, when he comes back and he says
Loki's
that this
communist.
SJW movement is started actually in the 60s.
Yeah, well,
The
let's say
SJW thing?
it's okay. The social justice warrior movement we have today is a combination of the civil rights, which was the subterfuge from the communists, who are basically getting black people to create civil unrest, and saying, "Hey, in communism, we don't see color. Everybody's equal in communism. You should be communists.
Yeah.
Let's bring communism."
Yeah, equality.
But
I mean,
the
But-
hippies were the tree hugging,
It's 'cause-
the peace and love.
it's because
the
communism
counterculture to
wraps itself in this
conservatism.
idea of equality. So, like, it's.
I haven't finished. The hippies were the peace, love, tree hugging counterculture to conservatism. Those two morphed and interbred with each other, and that's what created social justice warriors. So you have this climate change where people are worse than animals and trees, and there's no hierarchy where humans are at the top in their mentality, right? But then they also have that communist, everybody's equal, equality of outcome. The poor minorities need to be treated better than everybody else because they're what's the called, marginalized groups.
Yeah.
Right? So that's actually a
oppressed
combination of the hippies and the civil rights movement, which
So
the civil
now-
rights movement was started by communists.
But Trigger, now instead of hippies, they split into two. They turned into vegans and juggalos. But the thing about
No, just no.
But the thing about the hippies is that in those days it was illegal to be communist. You couldn't right away say
Not
I'm
right away.
communist, whatever.
Not right
Hippies
away.
were not communist. Hippies were not communists.
It was a legal idea of communism. The idea of having, because it's all about they
It
had the
wasn't, but
peace of-
okay.
Listen, it was the legal.
It was not illegal.
loophole.
Find me one law.
The legal. Are you fucking kidding, dude? If you had the Book of Marx, I played L.A. Noir. Okay, I
That's
played the game
McCarthyism,
outside the 50s.
and that is much, much after the 50s. In the 60s.
Yeah, but people still had the stigma. There was still the stigma after it was
Yeah,
illegal.
you said law.
You didn't let me finish.
You still
did
said
say
it was
law.
illegal. It was not illegal.
It
There
was-
were actual socialist communes all over the country that all collapsed because socialism is a fucking failure. The hippies
Yeah,
went
duh.
out and created their fucking communes, and then they had what they
Wait.
called weekend warriors, which were people who lived in society and lived in the capitalist way, and then came and pretended to be socialists on the weekends,
okay.
and it
Wait,
caused
wait,
the
wait.
like
societies
hippies.
to collapse.
Who's
Do you
telling
like
me about that
hippies?
very first communist commune that showed up in the States back during, like, way
Me.
back in the day? Was it you?
It was before the states. Yeah, it was the first settlement.
What was it called? Jamestown?
Yep. It was the first, and
no, not
fucking
Jamestown,
over
Jamestown.
half the people there died, and then they became a capitalist system, and that's the only reason it succeeded. Had
Okay,
they stayed socialist, everyone would have died.
Hold on. Are hippies against
okay,
capitalism?
the chat is also getting pissed off. Can we go back to actually talking about the books?
Okay,
Just
here,
arguing
here.
about the stuff. We can save this
What,
for
one-
any
one
dumpster fire
person?
or a random dump. Or
You're
a
talking
la-
about one person.
Yes, there are.
Everyone else is a
They
part.
are our audience.
One person.
One
is-
person out of 5 people who are talking is said
Listen, Trigger. We don't
they
want that
didn't
dislike.
like
we
what
don't
they're
want
listening
dislike.
to.
Please, we can't handle a dislike.
Apparently.
I mean, it kind of ties into the book because they're trying to talk about
Yeah,
how
that's what
something
we're
like
talking
that
about.
could have happened in the first place and how
Right.
it would happen now.
It's
And
happening
we're
right
all
now.
we're all having the conversation as to how our society parallels what's in the book and how it
I mean, I think
predates
we
it.
thoroughly covered most things pretty well. Does everyone agree?
Here's the way I
Yeah.
want you guys to look at it. If somebody who was writing a book report on this book, would they be able to listen to this live stream and get an A+ on it?
Probably.
They would get like
Because they
A++,
go to a socialist
dude.
fucking school where they're going to be like, this is the society we should have.
Oh yeah, depending
So
on
no.
the teacher. The teacher gets triggered by what we're saying. They go, "Oh, I don't agree with this because my opinions." Then they're gonna get an F. It's like that's too much
Yeah,
truth in here.
exactly.
There's too many facts in here.
But no,
What
we
facts?
covered the storyline. We covered
Too many
the
facts.
themes and morals in the story. The reference. I think that was pretty in. Yeah.
Did you guys talk about healthcare with the whole when they have a working henchman like the
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Well, we kind of just talked about how these paramedics come and how Montauk finds that whole thing very invasive. Like they come
Well,
and they
see,
take
that's
her.
exactly how we're going through with our healthcare when the government gets involved because of liberals. No, not liberals. The Democrats. They want the government to be involved with the whole birth control pills. They want to be involved with just like insurance in general. Once government is involved with insurance, the
No one's
government gets
saying that
involved with your health.
this society isn't a semi-communist socialist society. We're not
I
disagreeing
know that.
with
I'm
that.
just saying that he predicted this. Like he saw that it was going to happen like that with the worst case scenario. We're in his worst case scenario where the government is involved with our healthcare.
We must all be alike, not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. I mean, I think that's straight
out
of
communist.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a good place we could end the stream, unless we just want to just continue talking in general.
I think
But
Loki wants to migrate over to your new live stream channel.
yeah, I'm okay with that. I think we covered everything pretty well.
I think so too.
We're gonna go to a new stream, or we're just gonna shout at each other and scream.
Yeah, so everyone, you
Maybe
can
not
come
that.
join us in
Everyone
the
join
other
the
stream.
Discord before you leave. Join the Discord.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, donate to the Patreon, click the little bell at the corner of the screen.
No.
Get notifications.
Just join the Discord. It costs you nothing.
If you use a
Come
promo
into
code
Discord.
NIGGER, it's going to give you 5% off on your
Erwin, why are you ruining my classy book club?
I know, right?
You know,
Loot crate,
we're okay.
Today's loot crate is fire. You're gonna get
Also-
fire in the
Wait,
box.
we need to announce the next
Yes,
book.
so the
that
next
people
book
get
is going to be the Turner Diaries, which Trigger Warning is picked, and it's going to be not next Sunday, but the Sunday after.
Are we doing the
So-
whole book or what?
Well, how long is the book?
It's not very long. It's a little
There's
bit
also the
longer than this
audio-
book.
There's the audiobook. We're gonna do a
Just
commentary.
do the
during
audio while
audiobook.
you're at work.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Okay.
Well, it's not a great written book. He's not going to be a best-selling author based
No.
on his
We're just
actual ability to
examining
write
the
a book.
concept.
Yeah.
The concept of the book though is basically the Democrats ban the guns and then they start basically taking black street gangs as a pseudo arm of the police and things like that. And then the white nationalists rise up and revolt against it. It's written by a guy who was a member of the KKK. He is a racist. The entire book is very racist.
Okay. Yeah.
So just throw that out there. So no surprises.
Also, a special surprise I never mentioned to anybody. I hope everybody's going to be happy with this. I will actually be doing an analysis video series of the books that we discuss.
Oh, that's actually
to make
awesome.
it more focused, more ideal. And I'm going to use the information here to
Great.
make,
To make response
to make it a
videos,
nice
too.
digestible size.
Get ready to hear a lot about melon. What is it called?
Watermelon.
Watermelon in skin.
I'm gonna say,
But
there's
I
gonna be a
will
lot
say
of-
not everything is going to necessarily be SJW theme as we progress through book club. I would like us to explore a variety of
So we're not going to do
literature.
Brave New World next?
We're
Well,
gonna do.
I want to do
gonna
Brave New
have
World. I want to
focus on
reread
dystopias.
1984.
I think we will do Brave New World versus 1984, but let's I mean, well, let's do the next book. So the
The
next
next book is going to be the Turner Diaries. It's about Timmy Turner. He gets to Fairly Odd Parents.
Okay, well, thanks for joining, everybody. Join us in Discord. If anyone wants to come and join us in the conversation, if you have read the book and you really just want to talk about it, join Discord and let us know, and then you can come onto the stream with us. So, okay, goodbye.
Okay, as a final thought, I'm going to upload another video tomorrow, I guess, afternoon, that is going to just give you guys the same info with the date of the actual live stream and the book that we're going to be reading. Feel free to share it with anyone else you want to either be involved in the book club or come and watch us. The links to everything is down below. Join the Discord, either Erwin's or ours. We're all always available. And I guess we'll see you in the next live stream after this. All right, have a good night.